Chapter 644. On the eve of the wedding in the Red Lawn King's domain, Hong Yi stood in front of the flowing wind palace. The bright moon shone down on Ji Ming, making him look even colder. His deep, black eyes looked towards the depths of the palace without any ripples. This was his last chance, and he couldn't miss it. The palace was decorated with lanterns and colored banners, creating a joyous atmosphere. Everyone was busy as the wedding was approaching. The night was long, and the cold moon was moving west. Hong Yi looked towards the depths of the palace and waited patiently. "Husband, it's time to change." Two beautiful maids walked over with black wedding attire in their hands. They bowed respectfully and said, "Your Highness, Your Highness, Your Highness, Your Highness." Ningchen nodded calmly. The three of them entered the palace. At this moment, powerful auras appeared in the depths of the king's domain. They were filled with the vicissitudes of time, and everyone in the king's domain could clearly feel the heavy pressure. "They're finally out." Ning Chen's footsteps paused as he looked into the distance. His deep eyes flashed with brilliance. The 5 Red Lawn ancestors appeared, and the princess came out to greet them respectfully. She didn't dare to be negligent. After bowing, Princess Hong Luan raised her head and saw that one of the 5 was missing. She asked softly, "Second ancestor, did third ancestor not come with you?" "His tribulation of the true realm is coming, so it's not good for him to show up," the second ancestor said calmly. Princess Hong Luan's eyes flashed with regret. After a while, she calmed herself down and smiled. "Ancestors, please." The 5 nodded and followed her. Not long after the 6 left, a red light flashed past. It was so fast that they couldn't even see its shadow. In an instant, the phoenix appeared. Looking at the spatial entrance in front of it, it stepped in without hesitation and disappeared. In the flowing wind palace, Ji Ming was wearing Zhu Xuanduan. His dark clothes were embroidered with golden patterns, making him look noble and extraordinary. The time for the wedding had come, but Ji Ming's face was still as calm as water. On the other side of the palace, Princess Hong Luan sat in front of the mirror in her red wedding dress. Under the red candles, her face in the mirror was as perfect as a painting. It was so charming that it seemed unreal. The flowers in the mirror and the moon in the water were beautiful and illusory, intoxicating. Behind Princess Hong Luan, 2 maids were helping her with her makeup. The red flowers added to her beauty. "Your Highness, the prince consort has already changed his clothes." At this moment, a maid walked over and bowed respectfully. When Princess Hong Luan heard this, she heaved a sigh of relief in her heart. She said softly, "I understand. You can leave first." The maid accepted the order and stood up to leave. Perhaps she was overthinking things. Princess Hong Luan stared at her reflection in the mirror as a complicated expression flashed past her eyes. Was it real this time? It was almost time. Outside the main hall, the sun was rising in the east. Dawn had arrived. A figure walked out of the flowing wind palace. The maids who had been waiting outside respectfully bowed and welcomed Hong Luan as she set off on her horse. At the same time, in the great void immortal realm, a red light gathered and a phoenix appeared. Her black robe fluttered in the wind. The divine realm was vast, spanning thousands of miles. It was like a country. Above the 9 heavens, a majestic and dignified divine palace floated. It was extremely extraordinary. Ningchen looked at the divine palace in the sky and a light flashed past his eyes. He took a step forward and flew forward. Within the divine kingdom, it was primitive and backward. It was unlike the bustling world outside where thousands of creatures worked diligently and numbly. Above the void, Ningchen stopped and looked at the countless mortals below. He frowned slightly. There was not a single martial artist here. He looked up at the divine palace floating in the sky. Vaguely, there were hundreds of powerful auras gathered. There were countless experts in the mortal world, forming a clear contrast with the people below. Ningchen was focused on finding the Jasper Lake divine water. He quickly flew past and released his consciousness. He found the whereabouts of the Jasper Lake divine water in the divine kingdom. In the west of the divine kingdom, the raging waves hit the 9 heavens. After a few days of heavy rain, the flood once again broke through the river bank and rushed downstream. Downstream of the river, the people who were working in the fields saw the flood. They threw down their farming tools and ran for their lives in fear. However, the flood was as fast as a ferocious beast. In a few breaths, it had spread and swallowed all the people in the fields. The cries of thousands of people were drowned by the sound of the flood. The compassion of the people was ignored by the heavens and the earth. There was no God in the divine kingdom. Natural disasters occurred frequently, increasing the misery of the people again and again. In the void, knowing destiny felt something. He looked into the distance and saw a young woman in the flood trying to lift a baby out of the water. The instinct of a mother was moving. Sighing softly, Ningchen flashed and flew above the flood. He reached out and grabbed the woman's arm, saving her from the flood. Leave. 100 miles away, Ningchen brought the mother and son down from the sky and said. The young woman recovered from the shock and immediately knelt down. She kowtowed and said, God, please save the people. I beg you. She begged and blood stained her forehead. The woman held the baby and kowtowed continuously, begging the god to save the people from the disaster. Ningchen frowned slightly and waved his hand to lift the woman up. He said calmly, I'm not a god. I'm just a mortal like you. There's no need to worship me. Didn't you come from the divine palace in the sky? Asked the woman in reverence. Ningchen narrowed his eyes and said, No, but the divine palace you mentioned doesn't have a god. The woman was shocked and couldn't understand. I have something to ask. I wonder if you know where the Jade Lake divine water is in this world? Asked Ningchen softly. The woman was startled. A moment later, she said uncertainly, I heard from the elders in the village that there's an immortal spring at the northern end of the divine kingdom. The spring water can revive the dead. Is that the Jade Lake divine water you mentioned? Ningchen nodded and said, Thank you. In return, I'll agree to your request. With that, Ningchen clenched his right hand. A black light flashed and Mo Kuang appeared. An extremely powerful sword intent spread out and sword light shot out. Break the sky. Ningchen stepped into the air and swung his sword. Beams of sword light fell from the sky and swept towards the roaring waves. It was an earth-shattering strike. Tens of thousands of sword lights split the flood apart, creating a path of survival. Once the path of survival appeared, Ningchen's sword energy changed again. Tens of thousands of sword lights condensed into one. With a loud bang, the flood ended and the earth collapsed. 100-mile-long ravine was so deep that the bottom couldn't be seen. The flood was immediately sucked into the ravine. The commoners were saved. Looking at the figure in the distant sky, they all knelt down and kowtowed to thank him. Ningchen landed in the void and looked at the woman behind him. I've already fulfilled your request. See you again. Ningchen didn't stay any longer and walked toward the north. The woman recovered from her shock. Looking at the black-robed youth leaving, she shouted, Are those people in the sky really not gods? Ningchen stopped and calmly said. The woman's expression changed and she said, Then what is the god that we worship generation after generation? Mortals who call themselves gods. With that, the black-robed youth disappeared into the distance. The woman stood there with a dazed expression. It was hard for her to accept the collapse of her faith. Although they had never seen the gods appear, generations after generations of inheritances had made them firmly believe in the gods. Today, when they encountered a flood, they did not expect that the gods would not come, but a young man who denied the existence of the gods would come. In the extreme north of the divine nation, at the end of the divine realm, Ningchen appeared. Looking at the dangerous place filled with wind and snow, his aura became heavy. Ice and fire restrained each other. The phoenix was a fire element and didn't like the cold. It was repelled by this world of ice and snow. Ningchen walked in the world of ice and snow. Phoenix essence circulated around his body to resist the cold. In the sky, snow was falling. Everywhere was white. The black-robed knowing destiny state cultivators were very eye-catching. Ningchen released his divine sense and kept looking for the immortal spring that the woman had mentioned. He didn't have much time. He had to find the immortal spring as soon as possible. The cold wind was bone-chilling. After walking for a long time, Ningchen stopped in front of a snow-covered mountain and frowned. The snow mountain in front of him was endless. What was more unique was that when his divine sense entered, it was forcefully stopped by an inexplicable force. Ningchen walked towards the snow mountain. If there were no accidents, this should be the place. On the snow-covered mountain, winter pines stood proudly in the cold wind. Their needle-like leaves were covered with ice and snow. It was a beautiful sight. The path of the snow mountain was rugged and difficult to walk. Ningchen walked quickly and disappeared into the pine forest. In the depths of the pine forest, the sound of flowing water could be heard clearly. It seemed to be right in front of him. However, it was difficult to find it. After searching for a long time, Ningchen stopped. His eyes flashed coldly. Illusion! With a wave of his hand, Mo Kuang appeared in his hand. He slashed with his sword and forcefully broke the formation. Crack! The mirror flower, water moon shattered and the surroundings immediately distorted. Suddenly, a sharp halberd light slashed towards him. Ningchen stepped back and retreated. However, the halberd light followed him like a shadow. It was difficult to dodge. The young man in silver held the halberd and danced in the wind and snow. He was extremely powerful. Back off! The halberd attacked continuously. Ningchen dodged several halberd strikes. Finally, impatience appeared on his face. Light gathered on his sword and he slashed with the halberd. With a loud bang, the wind and snow became chaotic. The silver-clothed man retreated. Blood dripped from his halberd hand, dyeing the ground red. Who are you? How dare you trespass into the divine realm? The silver-clothed man suppressed his surging blood qi and said in a deep voice, Debt collector, the realm king of the Red Luan realm has taken his reward. It's time for him to pay the price. Ningchen said coldly and stepped forward. His sword cut through the wind and snow. The silver-clothed man blocked with his halberd. With a bang he was sent flying again. They were both at the absolute perfection realm, but the difference in strength was like heaven and earth. Absolute suppression. Wherever the cold Mo Kuang passed, the snow melted and evaporated. After a few breaths of time, the sword light entered his body. Blood spurted out and dyed the sky red. Pulling out his sword, Ningchen did not look back and continued to walk forward. The silver-clothed man fell to the ground, blood flowing from his chest. He looked at the back of the black-clothed man, his eyes filled with unwillingness. Why was there such a huge difference in strength when they were both at the absolute perfection realm? Why? The cold wind whistled and dyed the silver-clothed man's body red. His unwilling eyes gradually lost their luster. Even in death, he could not rest in peace. In the distance, Ningchen stopped in front of a clear green pond. Looking at the water in front of him, his eyes lit up. Finally, he found it. Chapter 645. In this world that was wrapped in silver, it formed a grid of its own and wasn't affected by the cold air of the outside world in the slightest. Ningchen walked to the front of the clear pool. Feeling the endless life force of the pool, there was finally a slight change in his calm gaze. After searching for a few years and experiencing life and death situations, he finally found the most important divine water of the Jasper Lake. With a flip of his hand, the green cauldron appeared and floated in the air. In the clear pool, the water rippled and turned into a waterfall that went against the heavens and entered the green cauldron. Just at this moment, a gloomy roar came from the green pond. The water that rose up immediately fell back down into the green pond. The water fell back into the pool and a huge black shadow soared out from under the water. It had a pair of wings on its back, a body covered with scales and thorns, a big and long head, a sharp nose, sharp eyebrows, sharp teeth, and a protruding forehead. Winged dragon. Looking at the monster in front of him, Ningchen squinted his eyes. There was actually such a ferocious beast in the Jasper Lake. When the winged dragon appeared, the sky was covered by dark clouds. Lightning flashed and thunder rumbled. Before the heavy rain could fall, it had already condensed into hail and fell from the sky. In front of the clear pool, Ningchen stood quietly. The wild ink sword qi in his hand was constantly increasing. He did not dare to be careless when facing a ferocious beast that shook the ancient era. Roar! With a furious roar, the winged dragon opened its mouth and spat out black water vapor. Its heavy aura was like a falling mountain. It was extremely shocking. Ning Chen took a step forward and his figure leaped to avoid the dragon's breath. Shortly after, the sword in his hand turned and thousands of sword lights surged out and slashed towards the winged dragon. With a bang, the winged dragon swung its tail and the sword lights collapsed. The aftershock shook the ground and split it apart. The powerful ancient ferocious beast's body was as hard as metal and stone. After being baptized by the water of the Jasper Lake for countless years, it was no longer afraid of the sharpness of swords. Seeing that swords were useless, Ning Chen snorted coldly and stepped into the sky. His figure disappeared and turned into a phoenix. The phoenix appeared and its cry reached the 9 heavens. Boundless phoenix flames spread out and evaporated all the snowflakes on the mountain range. The dragon and phoenix collided. Water and fire could not tolerate each other. The aura of the dragon and phoenix constantly rose. After the ancient era, the battle between the dragon and phoenix reappeared. The dragon's cry and the phoenix's cry resounded through the sky. The black water and red flames intertwined in the sky, covering the sky and the sun. Rip! The sound of flesh being torn apart rang out. A piece of dragon scale where Rainbringer's eyes should have been torn off by the phoenix's sharp claws. Blood gushed out and splattered on the ground below. Roar! With a painful roar, he opened his mouth and exhaled, engulfing the phoenix. When the dragon's breath arrived, the phoenix soared into the sky at an extremely fast speed. In the blink of an eye, it teleported, and its sharp claws once again aimed at the weakest part of the dragon's face, the scales on its face. In an instant, blood sprayed all over the sky, and a beautiful scene bloomed between heaven and earth. In the battle between the dragon and the phoenix relied on its extreme speed to gain the upper hand in the battle. Its sharp claws forcefully tore apart the dragon's scales one after another, revealing its flesh and blood. Amidst the rain of blood, the phoenix transformed back into its human form. Ning Chen looked at Winged Dragon and calmly said, "I'll take your life." As soon as he finished speaking, Mo Kuang's sword intense soared to the sky, slicing through the heavens and earth and slashing down. The winged dragon roared angrily, and its dragon breath collided with the sword light descending from the sky. With a soft sound, the wind stopped for a moment. The sword light cut through the dragon's breath and sank into the flesh on Winged Dragon's face. Unable to react in time, its vitality was instantly destroyed by the sword intent. Its massive body fell to the ground with a loud bang. Winged Dragon. At this moment, the wind and clouds in the sky changed, and an unusually powerful aura appeared. It was as if a divine general had descended from the heavens. "They're finally here." Ning Chen looked at the sky and narrowed his eyes. With a flip of his palm, the green cauldron sank into the clear blue pool. A huge suction force spread out, sucking all the pool water into the cauldron. The green cauldron returned, and Winged Dragon's corpse also disappeared in a flash, disappearing into the shadow of the phoenix. At the same time, the experts of the Divine Palace descended and surrounded Ning Chen. Their auras were powerful, and even the weakest among them had the cultivation of a superior supreme. The 3 leaders were all in the immortal void realm, trespassing into the divine realm and stealing the immortal spring. "You can't be forgiven," said the blue-robed man coldly. "No need to say more. Capture him and let the 5th forefather come back to deal with him," said another blue-robed man indifferently. "Let's see how much ability you have to stop me." Ning Chen's expression didn't change. His feet trembled, and the true essence around his body surged. Rays of sword light coiled up, and the sword became one, shaking the heavens and the earth. In the face of provocation, the 2 immortal ascension cultivators took the initiative to attack first. Their palms opened and closed like a ferocious tiger, destroying everything in its path. With a clang, the sword and the palm collided, and the cold air waves rolled. The pine trees along the way collapsed and were swallowed up in the aftermath. The sword became one again, and its sharpness reappeared. It was the first time a life-and-death situation had occurred since the knowing destiny state. The palm and the sword collided, and the sound of the sword reverberated through the snow mountain. Mo Kuang, who was waving his sword, was shining brightly. The flow of the sword was like a sword reaching the peak. After a few moves, the two immortal ascension cultivators looked dignified. They pushed their palms again, and the wind and clouds changed rapidly. Kill! At this moment, the white-robed man who had been watching the battle ordered in a deep voice. He immediately waved his sword and rushed forward. With a violent tremor, the two swords collided. The sharp sword light surged, and the mountains moved and the earth shook. Your swordsmanship is not bad, but that's all. The white-robed man said coldly. The green divine sword hissed, and the peerless divine weapon could destroy mountains and rocks. Ning Chen waved his sword, and Mo Kuang moved. His sword was like thunder, and even when facing the three immortal ascension cultivators, it was still as majestic as a mountain. Sky-shattering. Lin Hua's sword shattered the void. The huge sword mist cut through the heaven and earth, and forced the three to retreat. The three retreated, and the immortal ascension cultivators advanced again. Ning Chen looked at the impenetrable divine palace around him. He pointed with his left hand, and a vigorous force of origin surged rapidly. In an instant, the phoenix fire surged, and the shocking sword pressure surged endlessly. Four symbols deity sealing sword. The four symbols deity sealing sword reappeared, and the four symbols deity moved around, roaring and shaking the heavens. The heaven and earth felt it, and the light was overflowing, echoing the sound of the sword. The sword's peak exceeded the limit. Suddenly, there was a slight sound of the sword cracking in his heart. Ning Chen's eyes flashed with a touch of pity for the sword. Blood overflowed from his left hand, and he used his blood to protect the sword. The four symbols deity sealing sword roared, and its power was shocking. Suddenly, the aura surged, and the gods shook the sun. Seeing this, the three immortal ascension cultivators' eyes flashed, and they gathered their vital energy to block the sword. The other immortal ascension cultivators also gathered their vital energy, and their auras were connected, covering the sky and the sun. In an instant, the four symbols deity sealing sword appeared, and an unparalleled sword pressure appeared, rumbling and exploding, drowning the entire snow mountain. Several groans were heard, and blood spurted out. More than 10 immortal ascension cultivators flew hundreds of feet away, and blood gushed out from their bodies, dyeing the ground red. On the other side, the three immortal ascension cultivators also retreated a few feet, and the corners of their mouths were red. They were seriously injured. In the cold aftermath, the sound of the sword cracking was heard again. In Ning Chen's hand, Mo Kuang trembled, as if it was telling a story, and also as if it was bidding farewell. If your wish is to leave no regrets in the last sword, then I will fulfill your wish. Taking a step, Ning Chen leaped into the sky, and the sword aura from all directions gathered rapidly, crisscrossing and magnificent. Nirvana! At the same time, in the Red Luan royal territory, the time for the wedding had arrived. Inside the imperial palace, there were many guests, and the 5 ancestors of the Red Luan royal territory sat at the highest position, and below them were the territory king and princess consort Yaoji. The Dawn Moon Tower master arrived as promised, wearing a silver-gray robe and a large cloak. She was noble and cold, and there was a smile on her face, without any discomfort. And Hong Luan sat at the table next to the Dawn Moon Tower master. The little girl was still eating her own food as if no one was around, and turned a blind eye to the various cultivators. As usual, Hong Luan wore a veil on her face, and her eyes were gentle. From time to time, she would pick up some food for the little girl, but she rarely ate. Just then, outside the imperial palace, the sound of drums and gongs sounded. At the end of the White Jade Road, a group of maids in splendid clothes walked over, and in the middle, 2 figures were particularly eye-catching. Ju Pin was a knowing destiny cultivator, and his indifference was concealed, and his delicate face looked even more heroic. Beside him, Princess Hong Luan was wearing a red wedding dress, and a red veil covered her face. She walked step by step toward the imperial palace. In the imperial palace, various cultivators were deeply moved. This time, the Red Luan King's territory had obtained another outstanding young genius. From the battle that day, the strength of the prince consort Hong Wan had far exceeded the limit of his realm. Even a cultivator who had just entered the emptiness realm might not be his opponent. It was extremely difficult to cultivate the ultimate martial arts realm, but once one walked his own path, his combat strength was similarly unreachable. In the imperial palace, the ancestors of the Red Luan King's territory nodded in satisfaction when they saw the young man walking over. After that battle, they already knew that if such a genius stayed in the king's territory, there might be a day when a peerless cultivator comparable to the true realm would walk out of the king's territory. The two entered the palace, and the ceremony was about to begin. However, knowing Destiny's footsteps stopped, and his pitch-black eyes revealed a trace of light. Seeing this, Ji Xiang was startled, but he soon recovered and urged in a low voice, "Prince consort, it's time to bow." "No need." The demon opened his mouth and said indifferently. Hearing this, everyone was shocked. Queen Hong Luan's body trembled, and she lifted the red veil on her head in disbelief. Her eyes were filled with shock. The sudden change made the realm monarch Hong Luan furious. She slammed the table and sat up, saying in a low voice, "Do you know what you're saying?" I said no need. The demon looked away and said indifferently, "How dare you?" The realm monarch Hong Luan was furious. She slammed the table beside her, and immediately, the teacups fell and shattered, scattering all over the floor. But Queen Hong Luan clenched her fists and asked, unwilling to give up, "Do I still need to explain?" The demon's eyes were indifferent. "So, you've really recovered your memory." Queen Hong Luan's body trembled and she whispered. This farce made the guests' expressions interesting. Master Mo and Overlord Jinsi quietly drank their wine and watched the situation unfold. Interesting. The Dawn Moon Tower Master looked forward, and the corners of her mouth curved slightly. This was getting more and more interesting. Where was the real protagonist? On the side, Ur raised her head and looked at the young man in front of her. Her big eyes turned, and soon after, her small mouth twitched, revealing a dissatisfied expression. "Oh, what's wrong? Is it not delicious?" Hong Luan ignored the farce and looked at the little girl, asking softly. Ur shook her head, took a piece of dessert and stuffed it into her mouth in a fit of pique, and did not say anything else. It turned out that after leaving her behind, he ran here. No wonder there was no news at all. At this moment, the 5 Hong Luan ancestors all stood up from their seats. In an instant, an incomparably powerful pressure descended, and the entire palace shook violently. Chapter 646. In the Red Luan Palace, the wedding had changed. The atmosphere was heavy and oppressive, making it hard for people to breathe. On the high seats, the Red Luan 5 ancestors stood up. Their powerful auras shook the heavens and the earth. Within the palace, the demonic body stood there calmly. There were no fluctuations in its eyes, as if it was in a perilous situation. It was still as deep as the abyss. On the side, Master Mo's eyes flashed. He carefully sensed the aura of the person in front of him. After a while, he frowned. This person was Old 9. "Give me a reason to leave your corpse intact," the Red Luan 4 ancestors said coldly. "No need." As soon as he said that, the light flashed and the sword chi shook the heavens. Before they could react, the sword chi was so close to them. The Red Luan 4 ancestors' faces sank. They turned their palms and blocked the sword chi. Vast vital energy whizzed out. The flowing light moved again, evading the palm force and returning to the hall in an instant. The demonic body stopped. He looked at the 4 ancestors of the Red Luan Kingdom and said indifferently, "You only have this much ability and you dare to speak so arrogantly. Is the Red Luan Kingdom filled with hypocrites like you?" The Red Luan 4 ancestors' faces were gloomy. They took a step forward and attacked with their palms. At this moment, the Red Luan 2 ancestors suddenly trembled. They came back to their senses and shouted, "Old 4, something happened in the divine realm. Don't stay here and go back immediately." As soon as they finished speaking, the 4 of them flashed and disappeared from the palace. Hearing this, the Red Luan 4 ancestors' faces turned serious. They stopped attacking and quickly followed without hesitation. "Wait here. Don't run around." As soon as he finished speaking, Ji Ming moved and also disappeared from the palace. Chase! The Red Luan Realm King shouted and rushed out of the palace, chasing after the former's aura. In the depths of the palace, in front of the entrance of the Divine Realm, the Red Luan 5 ancestors entered one by one and disappeared. Behind them, the demonic body followed and entered the Great Void Divine Realm without any hesitation. In the Divine Realm, in front of the Snow Mountain in the extreme north, the Phoenix body and the Great War Deity Palace's Nirvana sword chi swept across the 9 heavens. In the next moment, the sword chi poured down like rain. More than 10 great Fulfillment Realm experts couldn't bear the extreme power and flew hundreds of feet away with blood. Bang bang! With several loud tremors, blood shadows crashed onto the ground one after another, causing sand and dust to fly up into the air. At the very center of the battlefield, 3 immortal treading experts took the Nirvanic rebirth head-on. Blood sprayed out as their bodies were sent flying, crashing into the mountains behind them. Buzz! Fine cracks appeared on Mo Kuang's sword, which rapidly expanded. The final sword chime was a farewell to the knowing destiny state. Bang! The tip of the sword shattered into pieces, and it transformed into stardust that dispersed into the heavens and the earth. The last sword, seeing the one and only, no regrets on the sword. Ningchen was speechless. He looked at Mo Kuang's stars in the sky and silently bid him farewell. The cultivators of the Divine Palace had been defeated. At this moment, thunder roared in the sky. Above the Divine Palace, one figure after another descended. Their aura covered the sky and the sun. In the Divine Kingdom, the common people couldn't help but kneel down and tremble as they looked at the many divine soldiers and generals in the sky. In front of the clear pond, Ningchen took a step forward and leapt into the air. His black robes fluttered in the wind, and his icy cold eyes were filled with killing intent. "It's you!" At the same time, the 5 ancestors of the Red Luan rushed over. Seeing the figure in the air, the 6th and 7th ancestors of the Red Luan recognized his face, and their expressions immediately turned cold. "Who is he?" the 2nd ancestor of the Red Luan asked coldly. "The 9th son of the Mahist sect," the 7th ancestor replied. "Wrong." In the void, Ningchen spoke. Looking at the demon in the distance, he said indifferently, "The person behind you is—" The 2 arrived at the same time. Behind them, the Red Luan Realm King, Princess, and the others also rushed over. Looking at the black-robed figure in the void, they said coldly, "It's you again?" Princess Hong Luan looked at the 2 young men in front of her. She understood a little, but she also had more doubts. These 2 had been fighting to the death before, so why were they working together now? The master of the Dawn Moon Tower appeared soon after. Looking ahead, the smile on her face grew wider and wider. Things were getting more interesting. "Kill them. Leave no one alive." The situation was unclear. The 4 ancestors of the Red Luan realm gave the order without thinking too much. In the void, hundreds of cultivators of the Divine Palace received the order. They rushed down and surrounded the people below. The demon flashed and appeared in front of the phoenix in a single step. Taisher slashed, cutting open the void and blocking the path ahead. Outside the battle, Princess Hong Luan saw the sword in the demon's hand. Her body shook, and her eyes were filled with confusion. The Red Luan Realm King also noticed this, and his face gradually darkened. How could he have the sword of the 9th son of the Mahist sect? Outside the battle, the 6th ancestor of the Red Luan realm leaped forward. His palm was vast and powerful. With a bang, the sword and palm collided. The auras of the 2 bodies flowed together, blocking the power of the corporeal realm cultivator. In the rumbling, the 2 bodies used the momentum to retreat, moving hundreds of feet away. "Now, I'll let you see the truth." The demon spoke. His appearance changed, returning to his original form. The 2 people standing side by side had identical faces, shocking everyone present. In the next moment, the 2 bodies merged, and a shocking aura erupted. The rumbling sound of swords broke through the 9 heavens. The phoenix and demon merged, and yin and yang merged. Suddenly, the sword energy rushed to the 7 evils, and thunder filled the sky. "Skybreaker!" With a light shout, sword intent rose. The Skybreaker sword reappeared, and its power was unparalleled. It was the peak of Taoism, and Taisher opened the sky. A 1,000-foot storm roared and slashed at the sixth ancestor of the Red Luan realm. The power of this shocking sword was far greater than before. The sixth ancestor of the Red Luan realm did not dare to be careless. He turned his palm and condensed yuan to block the sword light. There was a loud explosion. The world was chaotic, and the sword intent was unparalleled. It scattered in all directions, and its remaining power was inexhaustible. Hundreds of Divine Palace cultivators blocked the attack. The sword killed their souls, and several of them fell, covered in blood. The gods are dead. Below, the common people were shocked. They looked at the gods falling from the sky, and their faces were filled with shock. In the distance, the woman holding the baby also saw this scene. She finally believed that what the young man had told her not long ago was the truth. These people were not gods at all. It turned out that the gods they worshipped for generations were just a scam that had been passed down for countless years. In the sky, the prince consort of the Red Luan realm and the ninth son of the Mahist sect merged. The shocking fact made those who did not know what was going on unable to recover for a long time. So, the master of the Dawn Moon Tower was startled, but soon recovered. She smiled and shook her head. It turned out to be the truth. No wonder. She was wondering why there were so many peak swordsmen in the world. Not far away, Queen Hong Luan's body was constantly trembling. Her eyes were bloodshot, and she found it hard to accept this sudden truth. But Hong Luan asked in a trembling voice. The master of the Dawn Moon Tower looked at the Red Luan realm's side, and the smile on her face could not be concealed. A trap within a trap. The person who set up the trap had become the person in the trap. The self-righteous Red Luan royal family had tasted the consequences of their own actions. But in the sky, Queen Hong Luan's eyes became more and more bloody. Her voice was desolate, and everyone present could not help but feel a bone-piercing chill. In the blink of an eye, a mournful scream resounded in the sky. Queen Hong Luan's bloody aura soared into the sky. The phoenix crown on her head suddenly shattered, and her fine black hair turned white overnight. Seeing this, the master of the Dawn Moon Tower sighed. A pitiful person must have a detestable side. If she had known this would happen, she would not have done it in the first place. Outside the battle, a red light flashed past. Queen Hong Luan's aura rose to the extreme. Her delicate hand shook, and 100 feet of space collapsed. Bang! Taisher blocked the attack, and the aftermath shook. There was no longer any emotion in Ning Chen's eyes. In order to overcome the tribulation of love, he had used Queen Hong Luan's art of bewitchment to overcome the last obstacle before becoming a prime, cutting off the tribulation of love. All that was left was indifference. An attack full of hatred and a flawless defense, one attack and one defense. The friendship of the past was gone. Ning Chen, who only defended and did not attack, was extremely calm. His eyes observed the positions of the Divine Palace's experts and the 5 ancestors, and he quickly weighed the pros and cons in his mind. Old 5, old 6, old 7, don't wait any longer. Kill him, the 2 ancestors said coldly after observing the battle for a while. Okay. The 5th, 6th, and 7th ancestors nodded as their silhouettes flashed past, instantly joining the battle. The 3 moved and Ning Chen moved with them. The phoenix's speed was extremely fast. Housemaster, quickly leave the divine realm. With that, Ning Chen took a step forward, transformed into a phoenix, and shot up into the sky. Oh no! Seeing this, the 2 ancestors' expressions changed and they shouted, "Stop him! His target is the Divine Palace." The waning Moonhouse Master heard this and her eyes flashed. Without hesitation, her figure faded and disappeared. Below the Divine Palace, the experts of the Divine Palace rushed into the sky and chased after the figure in the sky. Hundreds of figures, their auras blotting out the sky, quickly flew into the sky, wanting to stop the phoenix in the sky. However, the phoenix's speed was not something that ordinary people could catch up with. In an instant, it had reached the sky. The phoenix transformed and returned to its human form. Then it split into 2, and the phoenix and demon ran side by side. In the divine palace, the experts left, and the defense became unprecedentedly lax. The huge building floating in the sky was like an empty city at this moment. "Watch carefully." "Thank you for your help with this move," said Ningchen indifferently. Immediately, the sword will around him rose sharply. With a wave of his hand, the white rainbow and Tai Shi appeared at the same time. One was hard and one was soft, one was yin and one was yang. The chi of the netherworld and the divine fire of the phoenix spread out at the same time. Yin and yang swirled, and the two elements opened the formation. The earth-shattering sword pressure swept through the 9 heavens. 6 paths fall together, thousands of demonic tribulations, Taishang forbidden sword. With a shout, the swords of the two bodies flowed together. Thousands of sword radiances circled, and the vast and huge sword supremacy move rushed into the 9 heavens. Doomsday catastrophe. In the thunderous thunder, thousands of sword radiances fell from the sky, covering a radius of thousands of feet, and rushed directly to the divine palace. Below, the faces of the cultivators of the divine palace, who were rushing over, changed dramatically. In the catastrophe of the sky collapsing and the earth falling, the entire divine palace collapsed and fell to the mortal world. The divine palace was destroyed, and sand waves covered the sky. In the moment when everyone was distracted, a flowing light flashed in the sky, and in the blink of an eye, it was thousands of feet away. "Everyone, let's meet again if fate wills it." In the void, Ningchen looked indifferently at the people below, and then his figure flashed past, heading directly to the entrance of the Great Void Divine Realm. At the entrance of the Great Void Divine Realm, the Dawn Moon House Master had just walked out when Ningchen appeared. Without saying anything, he waved Tai Shi in his hand, and the wild wind roared and slashed at the entrance of the Divine Realm. There was a loud rumble, and in the entrance of the Divine Realm, the matrices collapsed, and the space turbulence surged, swallowing the entire passage in an instant. This time, the Red Phoenix Realm King and the others will not be able to come out without paying a huge price. The Dawn Moon House Master looked at Ningchen's actions with admiration. He had calculated 10 steps with 1 step, and he was a genius. "I have no choice, and there are many things to settle. Will you come with me?" Ningchen smiled. "It would be my pleasure." The Dawn Moon House Master smiled softly. Chapter 647. The Realm King, Princess Lian, and the other ancestors were all trapped in the Great Void Divine Realm, unable to escape. In an instant, 90% of the king's domain's combat power was lost, leaving only Princess Yaoji. In the Imperial Hall, Ningchen and the Dawn Moon Tower Master returned, no longer hiding their auras. The powerful sword will shocked all the guests present. At the front of the seats, Princess Yaoji stood up when she saw the people who had returned, her beautiful eyes full of shock. How could it be them? Where were the Realm King and Princess Lian? "Master!" Ningchen walked to Master Mo and bowed respectfully. Master Mo looked at him up and down. After a while, he said lightly, "Give me an explanation when you go back." Ningchen replied calmly. Yaoji released her divine sense and felt the changes at the entrance of the Great Void Divine Realm. Her eyes changed and she flashed to the knowing destiny state in the main hall. Lord Mo stood up and took a step forward, blocking the former's palm with a bang. He said calmly, "The most important thing right now is to think about how to save the Realm King and the others. As for the grudge between Old Ninth and your noble realm, I don't think it's urgent now." Hearing this, Yaoji snorted coldly and stepped toward the destroyed entrance of the Great Void Divine Realm. After Princess Yaoji left, Master Mo looked at Mo Shaoai and said calmly, "Tower Master, thank you for taking care of Old Nine these days. We'll meet again if fate wills it." "You're welcome. We'll meet again," the Dawn Moon Tower Master said with a smile. "Old Nine, go back early." Master Mo looked away and instructed. Then, the 7 colors around him swirled and gradually disappeared. Light flashed in Ningchen's eyes as he watched Master Mo leave. Only after facing an advanced corporeal stage expert of the same level did he feel that his master was extraordinary. He did not know why, but he felt that Master Mo's strength was likely far beyond what he knew. "Little brother, how should I address you? Overlord Jinsi stood up and asked. Junior Ningchen. Ningchen came back to his senses and said with a smile. Heroes come from the young. If there's a chance, little brother Ning can come to Jinsi Imperial City as a guest. I'll be waiting, Overlord Jinsi said calmly. Overlord, you're too kind. If there's a chance, I'll definitely visit, Ningchen said politely. Empress Jinsi nodded and did not say anything else. She walked out of the Imperial Palace. In the distance, in the golden flames, a carriage pulled by 3 7-colored elks appeared. Empress Jinsi stepped in, and the carriage rose into the air. Empress Jinsi stepped in, and the carriage pulled her away. Ningchen, if you have any trouble with me, you can come find me at Tianyu Peak, the Heaven Speaker said as he stood up. His figure merged into the void and disappeared as well. He didn't seem to be, he was Overlord Heaven's master. He to the heaven to heaven to heaven to go to heaven to heaven to heaven to heaven to heaven to heaven. There's no need to think too much. Heaven Speaker has always been mysterious. Their actions and words do not follow common sense. The Dawn Moon Pavilion's master walked up and said, It's rumored that Heaven Speaker is the only existence in the world that can communicate with the heavens. They can hear voices that ordinary people can't hear and know things that ordinary people can't know. Although it sounds like nonsense, the strength of this Heaven Speaker is absolutely unquestionable, especially when she opens her eyes. Speaking of this, Overlord Jinsi's words became serious. Remember, if you have to face a Heaven Speaker one day, you must eliminate her before she opens her eyes. Otherwise, you won't have any chance to win, because the Heaven Speaker who opens her eyes is no longer a Heaven Speaker, but Heaven. When Ningchen heard this, his eyes narrowed and he nodded lightly in agreement. Let's go back to Xiaoye Chang and first, Overlord Jinsi said. Okay. Ningchen nodded and waved to the little girl sitting at the table. Let's go. Hearing this, threw down the chopsticks in her hand and trotted forward to hold the former's hand. Hong Wan also walked over and nodded to the man in front of her. The emotions in her eyes were all concealed. Miss Hong Wan, I'm sorry for what happened back then, Ningchen said softly with an apologetic expression. Hong Wan was startled and didn't understand why. We'll talk about it when we return, Overlord Jinsi said. Hong Wan nodded and followed. Ningchen held Yinu's hand and followed, walking out of the main hall together. Inside the royal palace, many guests looked at each other in dismay. A grand wedding had turned into an unpredictable farce. This time, the Red Luan royal territory would probably become the laughingstock of the entire Red Luan star field. However, when the Red Luan royal territory made trouble, how would Mo Gate deal with it? Would they hand over Mo Gate's 9th son or start a war? Outside the royal city, in a neighboring city, Xiaoye Restaurant. When the 4 of them returned, Ningchen changed his appearance from when he was in the Red Luan royal territory and explained what happened back then to Hong Luan. After hearing the reason back then, Hong Luan was silent for a long time before she softly said, since Sir Ning didn't do it on purpose and Hong Luan's injuries were healed thanks to Sir Ning, then Sir Ning doesn't owe Hong Luan anything. Let bygones be bygones. Thank you for your forgiveness. Ningchen bowed and thanked her while inwardly sighing. There was such a big difference between light and shadow. Hong Luan's tolerance was indeed inferior to the princess, but her kindness was hard to come by. Hong Luan, bring Yin'er out. I have some matters to discuss with little brother Ning. After explaining the past, Xiaoye Restaurant master glanced at the 2 of them and said. Hong Luan nodded and brought the little girl out of the room. Brother Ning, how many times have we had a formal conversation? Xiaoye Restaurant master walked to the table and sat down. This is the 3rd time. I didn't know you were a senior expert and overstepped my boundaries. I hope you can forgive me. Ningchen smiled. Senior, it's always the generation that dies before me. I don't want to be cursed to death so quickly. It's better for us to talk as equals. Xiaoye Restaurant master chuckled. Ningchen smiled and didn't continue on this topic. He sat down across from her and said, the relationship between Xiaoye Restaurant master and the Red Luan royal territory is so tense, but Xiaoye Restaurant is located next to the king's territory. It seems that even the king's territory has to be wary of Xiaoye Restaurant master's strength. Xiaoye restaurant master poured 2 cups of tea and pushed one of them over. You flatter me. Brother Ning was able to trap the entire celestial realm and above of the Red Luan royal territory in the great void god realm. It can be seen that compared to martial strength, wisdom is a killing weapon that can't be guarded against. It's just the light of a firefly. I don't dare to say the word wisdom in front of Xiaoye restaurant master. Ning Chen picked up the tea and replied. On the first floor, ordered another large table of dishes and ate happily at the table by the window. Across the table, Hong Wan looked at the little girl and helplessly said, Didn't you just eat? Hira raised her head and said with her mouth stuffed, Didn't you hear what that white-bearded old man said? He wants Ning Chen to return as soon as possible. Even the grass that can be eaten doesn't grow on the 9th peak. I have to eat more so that I won't have nothing to eat later. Hong Luan was helpless and asked, Don't you know how to cook? I don't. Straightforwardly shook her head. What about young Master Ning? Hong Luan asked. Why would he care about me? He doesn't need to eat, angrily complained. Doesn't anyone in Marquis sect know how to cook? Hong Luan asked. Thought for a moment and her eyes suddenly brightened. Yes, Sister Ling Luo should know how to cook. Why didn't I think of that? Ling Luo Zhen, master of Marquis sect's 8th peak, Hong Wan softly said. Sister Hong Wan also knows? Ina asked in surprise. Yes. Hong Wan nodded and softly said, The disciples of Marquis sect are widely known in the entire Red Luan star field, especially the master of the 8th peak, Miss Ling Luo. She's known to be a genius. Perhaps, Miss Ling Luo will be able to step into the corporeal realm soon and become one of the strongest experts in this world. That's amazing, said in surprise. Hong Luan nodded and asked, Do you have a good relationship with Miss Ling Luo? Yes, when we went to the 9th peak, Sister Ling Luo and Ning Chen's 5th senior brother were the friendliest to us. As for the others, we rarely interact with them, truthfully said. It's hard to imagine that young Master Ning, who has half a devil's body, can actually be so kind to others. I even feel afraid when I talk to him, Hong Luan softly sighed. Hua raised her head and smiled brilliantly. Sister Hong Luan, you're thinking too much. Ning Chen is actually very easy to talk to. It's just that he's experienced too many things and has become like those old monsters who have lived for several hundred years. However, he's pretty good to the people around him. Of course, when he's ruthless, he's also quite scary. I heard the Tower Master say that devils are born from the heart and that they've all suffered unimaginable blows. Young Master Ning's temperament is so strong, so how did he walk on the path of the devil? Hong Luan softly asked. Hearing this, his beautiful eyes dimmed. It's because Sister Qing Ning was Ning Chen's only relative in this world. However, she was forced to her death by bad people. That was also the first time I saw Ning Chen and I almost collapsed. It was very scary. At that time, I was also almost killed by Ning Chen. Hearing this, Hong Luan's expression shook. She found it hard to believe. Although the Tower Master had said that young Master Ning was a devil, she didn't think too much about it because young Master Ning didn't seem much different from a normal person. On the 2nd floor, the two of them had already conversed for over an hour. The tea in their cups had gradually cooled down and they placed it on the table without refilling it. The Dawn Moon Tower Master looked at the young man in front of her and sighed. Previously, I found it strange that with a devil's nature, how could he always maintain his rationality? Today, after seeing what happened in the Red Luan King's territory, I finally understand that a person's rationality and wisdom can actually be so terrifying. The Red Luan King's territory exhausted all its schemes, but in the end, it was all for you. Only after today's chess piece and looking back did she realize how terrifying the person in front of her was. He used Queen Red Luan's bewitching technique to pass the love tribulation and then used the wedding to divert everyone's attention. After obtaining the Jade Pool's water, he took the opportunity to scheme against the Red Luan King's territory's king and the other ancestors, capturing the top battle strength of the Red Luan King's territory in one fell swoop. Step by step, one step after another, one step after another. If a person's emotions and actions could be controlled by their rationality, could such a person still be called a person? Perhaps there wasn't any difference between the phoenix and demon dual bodies of the young man in front of her. Chapter 648. In the starry sky, his red clothes fluttered in the wind as he strode forward. Streaks of starlight streaked past, so dazzling that even though he was thousands of miles away, it seemed as if he was right beside him. In-er looked at the surrounding starry sky, her large eyes filled with curiosity as usual. She looked left and right, unable to remain still for even a moment. The star field was vast, and from time to time, when they passed by great life stars, they could clearly feel waves of powerful auras. They were incomparably majestic, like a vast ocean. Ningchen, after we return, will Master Mo punish you? Mo planet was getting closer and closer. In-er recalled what had happened at the Red Lawn King's realm and asked worriedly. No. Ningchen shook his head. Asked Inu, confused. Regarding the matter of the Red Lawn royal territory, who is right and who is wrong is not something that can be determined with just a few words. Mo Master has no right to judge this matter, said Ningchen calmly. Oh. In-er nodded and said, if the Red Lawn King's territory were to cause trouble in the future, would Master Mo hand you over? I'm not sure. We can't worry about that right now. The Red Lawn Realm Queen and the others won't be able to come out anytime soon. Let's deal with this first, said Ningchen. What is it? Asked Inu, puzzled. Look for a spirit vein and plant a peach tree, Ningchen said seriously. While the two of them were conversing, Mo planet was already within reach of them. Lord Mo and Chi Huan, who had returned first, had already returned to Mo Mountain. Half a day later, at Ink Mountain's Whispering Peak, Ningchen returned. He looked at the white-robed old man on the Dao platform and bowed respectfully. Master! On the Dao platform, Mo Zhu opened his eyes and said calmly, It's good that you're back. Tell me in detail what happened in the Red Lawn King's territory. If the fault lies in the King's territory, I will naturally seek justice for you. Ningchen bowed and explained everything in detail from when he first entered the Red Lawn Galaxy until he went to the Red Lawn Royal Territory to ask for the Jade Pool water. Other than some of his own secrets, Ningchen did not hide anything else because there was no need to. Mo Zhu quietly listened to the former. After a long time, he nodded and said, I understand. You can go and rest first. Disciple will take his leave. Ningchen bowed respectfully, then turned around and left. Looking at the back of the former, Master Mo's eyes flashed with a glimmer of light. Old Nine, how many secrets are you hiding? Ningchen returned to the 9th summit with In-er. He had not returned for many days, and the hut in front of the bamboo forest was covered in dust and fallen leaves. Clearly, no one had cleaned it for a long time. I'm going to look for Sister Ling Luo. Looked at the 8th summit. Her big eyes darted around, and she said in a coquettish voice. Okay, come back soon, Ningchen instructed. Got it. In-er replied and jogged towards the 8th summit. Seeing that the little girl had left, Ningchen went into the house and took a broom to start tidying up. It was getting late and he had to clean up as soon as possible. The illusory soul body looked at the person in front of it and said, The matter of the spiritual land requires one person to find it. That won't be difficult, but the following matters will be very troublesome. Ningchen nodded and said, The undying peach tree needs 9,000 years to bloom and bear fruit. That's too long. We must think of a way to deal with it. Chongling has formations that can speed up the flow of time. However, it is still not enough for the immortal peach tree to bear fruit quickly, the demonic body said gravely. Time seal, Ningchen said slowly. Light flashed through the demonic body's eyes. He said, This seal only exists in legends and has never appeared in the mortal world. How can we find it? I'm not sure. Mo Master is one direction. The other is the Dawn Moon Tower Master and the Heaven Speaker. These three are not ordinary. Perhaps we can find some clues, Ningchen said calmly. The demonic body nodded and said, There are too many unimaginable things in Mo's sect. It is not good to stay here for long. Once we obtain news of the time seal or other methods of reviving the dead, we must leave as soon as possible. As for the Dawn Moon Tower Master, until today, I still cannot figure out how he saw through my identity. This person's secrets are no less than MO masters. We must be on guard. Ning Chen carefully swept away the dust in the corner of the house and said, "One step at a time. Let's test MO master first. There is no need to interact too much with the Dawn Moon Tower master for now. Businessmen always prioritize profit. It is not difficult to interact with each other, but it is not easy to form a deep relationship. Compared to these two, I actually want to go to the Heavenly Word Peak and visit that heaven speaker." "You think she will know?" the demonic body asked with a frown. "Not entirely because of this." Ning Chen raised his head and looked in the direction of the Heavenly Word Peak. He said, "All this time, in order to revive the ghost girl, we have hurried through every place. Other than the divine prefecture, our foundation is too shallow. Just like this time in the Red Luan King's realm, although we trapped the Realm King and the Red Luan ancestors in the Great Void God realm, we were unable to completely solve this problem. The reason is because our foundation is too shallow. When we need manpower and combat power, we are unable to do so." "You mean we should rope in that heaven speaker?" the demonic body asked seriously. "Perhaps we can try." Compared to MO Master and the mysterious Dawn Moon Tower Master, that heaven speaker might be a better candidate to befriend. Previously, she took the initiative to express her goodwill. We can use this opportunity to test whether it is true or false. If it is true, gaining the friendship of a heaven speaker will be very beneficial to us in the future. If it is false, we can immediately leave without too much loss, Ning Chen replied calmly. The demonic body thought for a moment and said, "I am not good at this." "You will do it. Leave the search for the spirit vein to me. We will split up and focus on finding the time seal." Ning Chen agreed. He thought for a moment and said, "When searching for the spirit vein, pay more attention to the whereabouts of the main body. There are too many things to do now. If the main body is here, it will be much faster." "Understood," the demonic body replied. As he spoke, Ning Chen raised his head and looked in the direction between the 9th peak and the 8th peak. He frowned and said, "Why is this girl back so quickly? Something might have happened. You deal with it." After saying that, the demonic body's soul merged into Ning Chen's body and disappeared. Not long after, ran back breathlessly and said, "Ning Chen, Sister Ling Luo is missing." Ning Chen narrowed his eyes and said, "She might have been sent out by MO Master to do something. What's wrong? Is there anything strange?" "Something's not right. Go and take a look," said a little anxiously. Ning Chen nodded and took the little girl with him. He took a step forward and rushed towards the 8th peak. On the 8th peak, the two of them appeared in front of an elegant and quiet house. Ran forward and pushed open the door of the bamboo house. She said anxiously, "Look." Ning Chen took 2 steps forward and looked into the house. He slowly frowned. The house was already covered in dust. It was clear that no one had lived in it for some time. Ning Chen walked into the house and looked around. He wasn't unfamiliar with Ling Luozhen's house. The clothes and decorations in the room were exactly the same as before they went to planet Hongluan. This meant that Ling Luozhen hadn't planned on leaving for too long. However, the current situation clearly wasn't like that. Could something have happened to Sister Ling Luo? With the 3rd peak's master as an example, Nin's eyes were filled with worry. "Wait," Ning Chen said as he carefully searched the room. The furnishings in the house were very simple. Other than a table, chairs, and a bed, there was only a dressing table. There was only a mirror and a peachwood comb on the dressing table. Ling Luozhen didn't like to use makeup, so she didn't put those things on the dressing table. "Ning Chen, I can't find the box of makeup I gave Sister Ling Luo," said anxiously as she looked around. Ning Chen frowned and released his divine sense to search the entire 8th peak. Not long after, Ning Chen's eyes focused and he said, "That box of makeup was thrown under the pear tree by the cliff. Go and pick it up. Don't attract anyone's attention. After you pick it up, go back to the 9th peak." But responded and jogged out. Ning Chen followed her out of the bamboo house and rushed towards the 5th peak. Qi Huan stood in front of the 5th peak and looked into the distance. No one knew what he was thinking. Ningchen arrived and said, "Fifth senior brother." Chi Huan was startled. He came back to his senses and said, "You're back." Ningchen nodded and said, "Fifth senior brother, where did Sister Ling Luo go?" "I don't know." Chi Huan shook his head and said, "Senior brother, didn't you ask Master?" Ningchen frowned. "Master just returned." According to 6th junior brother and 7th junior brother, Sister Ling Luo was still on the 8th peak before Master left for planet Hongluan. Chi Huan sighed softly. Did Master say anything? Ningchen didn't understand. Chi Huan shook his head. Ningchen understood and didn't ask any more questions. He bade farewell and walked towards the 9th peak. 9th junior brother. At that moment, Chi Huan opened his mouth. He wanted to say something but hesitated. Then he sighed softly and said, "It's fine. You can go back and have a good rest." Ningchen narrowed his eyes and responded. He then rushed towards the 9th peak. Ningchen waited quietly in front of the bamboo house. Before long, ran back. Just as she was about to hand over the rouge, she saw Ningchen shake his head. "Before we leave Ink Mountain, you have to take this rouge," Ningchen sent a message to her. "Okay." Responded softly and carefully put the rouge box away. She didn't ask anything else. Night fell and the cold moon rose. Ningchen stood quietly in front of the bamboo house. He hadn't rested. His eyes flickered from time to time as he thought about everything that had happened recently. There was something strange about Mo Gate. There was no doubt about it. From Ling Luozhen entering the forbidden land of wind and fire to suppressing her cultivation base to Ling Yun's accidental death, to Ling Luozhen's disappearance today, there was something fishy about everything that had happened. There were only two reasons. Either there was something wrong with Master Mo, or there was a power that Ink Sect couldn't resist controlling everything from behind. Regardless of the reason, Ink Sect was not a safe place. However, what he didn't understand was why the disciples of Ink Sect, such as Ling Luozhen and Ling Yun, had stayed behind despite knowing how dangerous it was. There seemed to be many opportunities to escape Ink Sect. Going to the Western Celestial World was the best opportunity. However, Ling Luozhen and the others had still returned. It might be a problem with their cultivation methods, the devil body reminded him. Ningchen nodded. That was the only explanation. The only similarity among the disciples of Ink Sect was that they all cultivated the cultivation methods that Master Mo had bestowed upon them. Tomorrow, we'll ask Master Mo about Ling Luozhen. Let's see what kind of answer he gives. Also, we can use this opportunity to ask him about the time restriction, Ningchen said calmly. Chapter 649. A cold wind blew at the Whispering Peak and leaves fell. The aura of late autumn spread through the mountain, making it seem bleak. Hong Yi bowed in front of the platform to greet Mo Gate's master. "Master," Ningchen said respectfully. "What's the matter?" Mo Gate's master asked. Disciple came to ask Master if there really is a time restriction in this world. Ningchen didn't beat around the bush and directly asked. Mo Gate's master was puzzled. "Why do you ask?" Disciple once came into contact with the Yellow Springs restriction in an ancient land and learned a lot. Therefore, Disciple is very interested in the time restriction, which is also a divine restriction. There is indeed such a restriction. Mo Zhu nodded and slowly said, 400 years ago, Master wasn't Mo Zhu's master yet. When I was wandering outside, I personally witnessed a grand cultivator using the time restriction. The destructive might of the divine restriction is something I still can't forget. Ningchen's expression turned serious. "Master, do you know who that grand cultivator is?" Mo Gate shook his head. "I don't know. We only met once and never met again." Ningchen's expression was regretful. A moment later, he suppressed the fluctuations in his heart and looked at the old man with a serious expression. "Disciple has one more thing, but I don't know if it's appropriate to ask." "Speak." Mo Gate's master replied. "Where did 8th senior sister go? When will she return?" Ningchen asked. Mo Gate's eyes didn't change at all. Her corporeal realm tribulation is about to arrive. She needs to focus on her cultivation and won't return for the time being. As for how long, it will depend on when she can take this crucial step. May I know where 8th senior sister is cultivating? Ningchen didn't give up and continued asking. Why are you looking for her? Mo Gate's eyes narrowed. Disciples' cultivation has reached a bottleneck. 8th senior sister's lunar scripture and my solar scripture complement each other. Perhaps they can help me overcome this bottleneck, Ningchen said calmly. Mo Gate's eyes flashed. After a long time, he said, a demonic calamity is descending on Galistar in the north of the Red Phoenix Star region. Go and deal with it. You can use this opportunity to break through your bottleneck. 8th senior sister. Ningchen opened his mouth. However, before he could ask, he was interrupted. We can talk about her after you return. The demonic calamity can't be delayed. Let's leave today, Mo Gate's master said coldly. Yes. Ningchen bowed. He had no choice but to leave first. On the 5th mountain peak, Chi Huan looked in the direction of the Whispering Peak and sighed. 9th brother had the heart, but unfortunately, this matter was not something he could resolve. Ningchen's expression darkened as he stood outside Legacy Summit. He took a step forward and charged towards the 9th summit. Behind him, on the Dao platform, Mo Zhu frowned as he watched the former's disappearing figure. He could no longer conceal his displeasure. Red light gathered on the 9th summit. Ningchen appeared and walked out of the Dragon's Gate. When Yin, who had been waiting for him, saw this, she jogged over and asked with concern, Did you manage to get anything out of him? We'll talk about this later. Pack your things and head out, Ningchen replied. Yin was startled and asked in confusion, Didn't we just come back? Why are we leaving again? Master Mo gave me a mission. If there's anything, we'll talk about it on the way. Let's pack up first, Ningchen instructed. Yes. When Yin heard this, she did not ask any more questions. She ran back to the bamboo house and put on the package that she had not had the time to open before handing it over to the former. Ningchen waved his hand and put away the package. Then he brought the little girl down the mountain. Outside Mo Gate, Ningchen turned around with a grave expression. After one last glance, he stepped into the Dragon's Gate and disappeared. In the starry sky, could no longer hold back and asked, Where are we going? Galistar, replied Ningchen. Why are we going there? Asked Ing. Master Mo said that a demonic calamity is happening there. But that's clearly just an excuse for him to send me away. None of the peak masters of Mo Gate are weak. It's not up to me to deal with them. The true problem lies with Ling Luoxin's disappearance. My questioning has clearly angered Master Mo, said Ningchen gravely. Then what should we do? Did something really happen to Sister Ling Luoxin? Asked Yinger worriedly. Where's the rouge I told you to put away? Asked Ningchen after thinking for a moment. It's here. Took out the rouge from her bosom and handed it over. Ningchen received it and opened the box. Looking at the rouge that was as red as blood, he narrowed his eyes. This was going to be troublesome. What is it? Did you see something? Asked Yin impatiently. Something really did happen to Ling Luoxin. It's very likely the same thing as the 3rd Peak's master, Ling Yun, said Ningchen. How could that be? Yin felt extremely pained. Tears flashed in her eyes. How do you know? This rouge contains Ling Luoxin's blood. She clearly sensed danger and purposely left it behind, said Ningchen. Who wants to harm Sister Ling Luoxin? Is it Master Mo? Asked Yu. I can't be sure. But based on the current situation, the possibility is very high, said Ningchen gravely. Yin wiped away her tears. Then after this trip, we won't return. Mo Gate is too dangerous. If it really was Master Mo's doing, then whether we return or not isn't something we can decide. Ningchen sighed softly. If they could leave, Ling Yun and Ling Luoxin would have left long ago. They wouldn't have stayed in Mo Mountain to wait for death. There must be a force that they couldn't resist. It's just that we don't know about it yet. Is there no other way? Asked Yin worriedly. Let's wait and see. According to Chi Huan and Ling Luoxin's previous warnings, there shouldn't be any problems before stepping into the immortal realm. Black light spread from Ningchen's body, and his demonic body appeared. Let's part here. We'll act separately according to the plan. Yes. Ningchen nodded. What about me? When Iner saw this, she asked anxiously. Follow the phoenix body. I won't be gone for too long. Mo gate is truly troublesome. The phoenix body can't handle it alone. I'll be back soon, said the demonic body calmly. Oh. Hearing this, nodded and obediently agreed. Don't expose yourself. Also, we don't know when Xian Luo will appear. You have to be careful, reminded Ningchen. I know. Once I find a suitable spirit vein, I'll rush back as quickly as possible. Before that, try not to clash with Master Mo. The demonic body didn't say anything else. His figure flashed and he flew to the other side of the starry sky. Let's go too. Seeing the demonic body leave, Ningchen and In also sped up, rushing to the north of the Hongluan starfield. On Galistar, demonic chi curled up. The entire planet had practically turned into a dead planet. Corpses were strewn everywhere, and rivers of blood flowed everywhere. It was truly a great terror, a world-destroying demonic tribulation that shook people's hearts. In front of the slaughtering sword sect, the black-robed sovereign stood calmly. His white hair danced in the wind, and the demonic mark on his forehead was dazzling. A terrifying aura shook the surrounding mountains. The sovereign of the devil's eyes were ice-cold. The demonic sword in his hand was dripping with blood. The reforged demonic sword was even more murderous than before. Within the slaughtering sword sect, the swordsmen had formed a formation. Numerous grandmasters were standing guard, blocking the demonic tribulation. In front of the formation, the black-robed sovereign moved. His demonic sword's light illuminated the sky. In an instant, demonic might filled the 9 heavens. Reincarnation. The demonic sword slashed out, and sword light coiled out, going back and forth in an endless cycle. In an instant, between heaven and earth, tens of thousands of demonic swords collided with the sword formation, annihilating everything. Ugh! Amidst a series of muffled groans, more than 10 great grandmasters of the sword faction flew out, covered in blood. Why? The sect master staggered a few steps and questioned. Because you all deserve to die. The sovereign replied coldly. He raised his demonic sword again, and an incomparably dense demonic chi spread out. In an instant, above the 9 heavens, the sea of clouds rolled, and 10,000 bolts of lightning struck. Bury the heavens. With a clang, the demonic sword stabbed into the ground. In an instant, hundreds of miles of mountains collapsed. In the sea of clouds, sword light descended. The bury the heavens technique was destructive. With a loud explosion, sand waves raged. With the slaughtering sword sect as the center, the entire mountain range collapsed. Blood spurted into the sky and rained down. The sovereign walked out from the raging sand waves. His white hair danced in the wind as he walked into the distance. At the same time, thousands of miles away, the Dragon Gate appeared. One big and one small figure walked out. The scene in front of them was shocking. What entered their eyes were only blood and corpses. There was no trace of life. In-er covered her small mouth as her body trembled. Even though she had seen the changes in Zhongzhou, seeing this scene again was difficult for her to accept. Ningchen looked at the little girl beside him and said softly, "It's okay. Don't be afraid." Came back to her senses and replied softly. Her small hands subconsciously tightened. Boom! Thousands of miles away, the mountain range collapsed. A terrifying fluctuation spread out. Ningchen felt it and looked forward. Without saying anything, he brought the little girl and rushed over. In the ruins of the slaughtering sword sect, the blood had yet to dry up. The mountain was dyed red, and it spoke of sorrow. Ningchen hurried over and saw the familiar demonic chi and sword intent. His body trembled violently. The slaughtering sword sect that was buried by the mountain rock had become history in a single day. Its name once shook the world, but now it was just a pile of yellow soil. Suddenly, there was a slight movement under the mountain rock. It was so light, but it was clearly heard by the 2 people present. Ningchen squinted his eyes and his figure flashed. He arrived in front of the mountain rock and waved his hand to shake it away. Under the mountain rock, there was a pool of blood. The light in the eyes of a middle-aged man in green was abnormally dim. When the master of the slaughtering sword sect saw the red-clothed young man appear in front of him, his dim eyes suddenly lit up. Demon! Before he could finish his sentence, he could only feel regret. He did not raise his drooping arms again. The master of the slaughtering sword sect was unwilling to leave this world. Sigh. Sighing softly, Ningchen stretched out his hand and closed the former's eyes. The grudges of the past had all disappeared after death. After stopping for a moment, Ningchen held Yin-Er's hand and left. Outside the mountain range, he waved his hand and condensed a sword. Rays of sword light soared into the sky and disappeared into the mountain range behind him. With a rumble, the entire mountain range collapsed and buried the bodies of the dead. The dead were buried and their souls returned to the yellow springs. Ningchen, is it really a demon? Yin-Er asked softly. Yes. Ningchen nodded and sighed again. In order to resist the Nether King, Ziyi's 3 souls had been demonized. Before Zhang Sun left, he did not speak of his regrets. Chapter 650. Gloomy clouds covered Galistar, and slaughter was everywhere. The desolate scenes made one's heart turn cold. Demons brought disaster to the world, regardless of gender, age, or age. Wherever they passed, demonic flames burned the plains. Dark clouds covered the sky, and thunder rumbled. It was as if they were lamenting over this calamity. The sovereign of demons walked forward, his eyes emotionless. The demonic mark on his forehead gave off a demonic red light, and his white hair danced in the wind. It was extremely dazzling. The 3 souls demonized, a demon among demons. Heaven and earth trembled as he walked forward step by step, lonely and desolate. 3,000 miles away, a red-clothed figure flashed, heading in the direction of the demonic clouds. At this moment, clouds shone brightly in the distance, and several figures descended from the sky. Their powerful auras shook the world. Oh no! Ningchen was shocked when he saw this. He hurried forward, increasing his speed. The wilderness was desolate. The rulers stopped in their tracks, and the air pressure between heaven and earth suddenly dropped. 11 top-notch powerhouses descended into the mortal world. Their auras surged, frightening gods and ghosts. The 2 at the front were young, but their auras were abnormally powerful. The pressure of the ascending immortal emptiness realm continued to spread. All living beings within 1,000 miles trembled in fear. Divine General Jin Shi, the demon, said indifferently. Kill! Qing Shao said coldly. At his command, the 9-peak great fulfillment powerhouses manifested long sabers in their hands. They formed a 3-on-3 formation and attacked. The killing formation arrived, and the demonic sword appeared. The sovereign's eyes were emotionless. His former benevolence had turned demonic. The swords and sabers clashed, and the king armaments faced each other. Sharp killing light swept out, splitting mountains. 3 waves of attacks, 1 attacking, 2 defending, and 1 attacking. There was a tacit understanding between them, and their battle prowess multiplied. However, the demonic sword did not show any flaws. Wherever it passed, the wind and clouds lost their color. It's more troublesome than I imagined. Qing Shao frowned when he saw that he did not have the upper hand. The white-clothed man nodded and said calmly, This demon is indeed not simple. You stay here. I'll deal with this demon. Qing Shao waved his hand, and cold chi surged. The azure frost sword appeared, and his figure flashed into the battlefield. With a loud clang, the demonic sword and blue frost collided. Demonic energy and cold energy violently collided. The remaining might of the sword rapidly spread outwards. When Qing Shao entered the battle instantly became white-hot. The edges of the swords intersected, causing thousands of waves of sand to rise and the sky to darken. In a battle between top experts, every move was a killing move. The aftershock spread in all directions, causing the earth to shatter and the sky to shake. In the blink of an eye, more than 10 moves had been exchanged. With the aid of the killing formation, the might of the azure frost sword was unparalleled. It actually managed to suppress the demonic sword by a bit. The ruler snorted coldly and shook off the battle with his sword. The moment the 3-3 killing formation retreated, the demonic chi on the demonic sword surged like waves. It soared into the sky, parted the thunderclouds, and connected heaven and earth. Heaven burning devil flame. Demonic flames suddenly descended, burning the sky and boiling the sea, dispersing the cold air between heaven and earth. The dazzling black flames gushed out like waves, like a surging fire dragon, shocking the world. When the demonic technique appeared, Qin Zhao's expression turned serious. The cold chi on the blue frost sword was activated and spread out again. The collision between the flames and the cold air caused the heavens and earth to shake violently. It was difficult for them to withstand this extreme power. The 9 powerhouses at the peak of the great fulfillment once again pressed forward. The sharp saber light was fatal. In the demonic flames, the ruler's body was like a black prison. His white hair danced wildly and his sword moved. With great power, he turned the situation around. The benevolent ruler and the ruthless demonic cultivator had once saved the world, but they could not save themselves. Outside the battle, Bai Qin stood quietly and watched the battle. She was not in a hurry to make a move. Just as the battle was getting more and more intense, Bai Qin's gaze focused. She turned around and looked behind her. Then her figure flashed and disappeared. 100 miles away, Red Clothes was rushing. Suddenly, a white light gathered in front of her. A white-clothed figure walked out and blocked her path. The Jinsi dynasty is in front. Your Excellency, please take a detour. The battle could not be disturbed. Bai Qin appeared to block the person and said calmly. Ningchen stopped and his eyes darkened. He said, "Get out of the way." "Sorry, I can't," Bai Qin said faintly. Ningchen was worried about his good friend's safety, so he did not say anything else. He took a step forward, and his figure was like an illusion as he passed by. Oh! Seeing this, Bai Qin's eyes flashed with a touch of depression. Her figure flashed, and in a flash, she blocked the front again. Heaven and earth moved extremely fast. For the first time, space cracks kept spreading between the two. Your Excellency, please take a detour. Bai Qin knew that the person in front of her was not ordinary. She did not want to offend him easily, so she said again. The sound of the battle in the distance could be heard clearly. Ning Chen's expression became colder and colder. He did not delay any longer. With a wave of his hand, a white rainbow appeared. Holding the rainbow sword, Red Clothes moved instantly. A dazzling white light flashed, and the yellow spring opened the way. Bai Qin focused and clenched her left hand. In the surging lightning, an equally white sword appeared. White lightning and blue frost, the 2 famous swords of the Jinsi dynasty, appeared in the world at the same time. The 2 swords faced each other. Extreme speed against extreme speed. Phoenix against thunder. The fast confrontation could not be seen clearly. Red light and white lightning intersected again and again between heaven and earth. The swords were cold and did not leave any leeway. The white swords, one was hard and one was soft, and the other was filled with lightning. When they collided, magnificent rainbow lights were reflected. In the battle of martial arts, Bai Qin had the upper hand. In the battle of swords, Knowing Destiny had the upper hand. Separated by one realm, Knowing Destiny went against the flow. Ning Chen's white rainbow changed constantly. Hardness and softness combined to close the gap between their realms. Sky shattering. With the sound of swords, an irregular sword mist whizzed out. It split the void and slashed toward Bai Qin. Bai Qin focused her eyes. Her body flashed like lightning and avoided the sword light. She immediately took advantage of the situation. White lightning surged and screeched. Troublesome opponent. Ning Chen said softly and stepped into the air. His sword stirred up the wind and clouds. The converging sword style of the heavenly book martial arts descended to the world. 9 sword suns circled and immediately fell from the sky. The shocking power instantly destroyed the world within 100 miles. The extreme sword power descended. Even Bai Qin, who was as strong as Divine General Jin Shi, did not dare to be careless. The white lightning divine sword gathered lightning from all directions and blocked the power of the 9 suns. The 2 techniques collided and the explosion spread endlessly. The land within 100 miles collapsed and was destroyed. In the aftermath, Bai Qin flew out. However, she could no longer see the red-clothed swordsman. 100 miles away, the red-clothed swordsman appeared. When Ningchen walked out, his pupils constricted. The sovereign in front of the dragon gate had white hair fluttering in the wind. His face was like that of a demon. His killing intent was piercingly cold. It was as if the king of hell had descended to the world. It was shocking. When the battle ended, corpses were everywhere. All 9 perfection sovereigns had fallen. None of them survived. Stop him. Not far away, Qing Shao staggered a few steps and vomited blood. His severely injured body could no longer support himself and fell straight down. Good friend, goodbye. With one last look and cold words, the sovereign stepped into the dragon gate and disappeared. Ningchen hurried forward but could not stop him in time. Qing Shao. Behind him, Bai Qin rushed over. When she saw the figure in the blood wave, she was shocked. She immediately went forward and helped him up. She poured her vital essence endlessly. Immediately, white lightning flashed around them. It was extremely dazzling. Ningchen glanced at the corpses on the ground and sighed. He held the little girl beside him and walked away. Sir, please wait. In the lightning, Bai Qin stood up and looked at the figure in front of her who was about to leave. Ningchen stopped and turned to look at her. He said indifferently, killing each other? Sir, you misunderstand. Bai Qin shook her head. May I ask if you are the master of Mo Gate's 9th peak? Yes, so what? Said Ningchen calmly. I am Bai Qin, a subordinate of Sovereign Jinsi. Just now, I had no choice but to attack. Please allow me to apologize to you, said Bai Qin apologetically. Ningchen's eyes flashed. Someone from the Jinsi dynasty? He had forgotten that Galistar was not far from Jinsi Star, where the Jinsi dynasty was located. Brother, you came in such a hurry. Are you acquainted with that demon from just now? Asked Bai Qin, confused. Ningchen did not answer. He said calmly, I still have matters to attend to. If you don't have anything else, I will take my leave. After saying that, Ningchen did not linger. He turned and left. That demon seems to be looking for a woman. A dead woman, said Bai Qin. Right after she said that, Hong Yi instantly flashed, forcefully breaking through the white lightning blockade and grabbing at her throat. Bai Qin was shocked. She quickly retreated 30 meters away. Swish. White rainbow cold kill. Boundless coldness spread out from Hong Yi's body. Killing intent that had not appeared even when they had fought just now was now rampant in the cold wind. Please don't misunderstand. That woman's death has nothing to do with us, explained Bai Qin hastily. Killing intent surged in Ningchen's eyes. His sword flickered with cold light. Beside him, Qing Shao was unconscious and in imminent danger. Seeing that Qing Shao was under Ningchen's sword, Bai Qin did not dare to be careless. She continued, rumor has it that before this demon recovered, he was chased by others. A woman brought him out of the encirclement. The demon was lucky enough to survive, but the woman was heavily injured and died. She was taken away. Ningchen's voice was hoarse. He could not suppress his killing intent, causing his sword to constantly hum. It was extremely piercing. I don't know yet. However, these people all had a coffin on their backs. They were extremely powerful. They were last seen on this planet, but for some reason, they completely disappeared, said Bai Qin with a grave expression. When Ningchen heard this, the hand holding his sword cracked. His aura shook, and his eyes, which had always been calm, were overflowing with killing intent. The demon just now has already lost his mind and cannot be left alive. No matter what grudges you had with him in the past, it is all in the past now. Demons are cruel, and it is impossible for them to return to the past. This planet, which is almost completely destroyed, is the best evidence, said Bai Qin seriously. Ningchen waved his hand and put away his sword. The killing intent in his eyes gradually receded. His eyes were calm once more. After the Emperor returned from the Red Luan King's realm, he has mentioned your name more than once in front of us. He admires you greatly. Since we have met here, why don't we go to Jinsi planet together and report what happened today to the Emperor? We can discuss this demon together, invited by Qin sincerely. There is no need. I still have other things to do. Goodbye. Ning Chen said indifferently and turned to leave. Looking at his departing figure, Bai Qin frowned. The person sent by Mahist's sect was actually the youngest ninth son. Just what was Mahist's sect's intention? However, based on the situation just now, this person's cultivation in the sword was truly terrifying. It was no wonder that even the emperor had a whole new level of respect for him. If it were not for the suppression of their realms, Bai Qin might have lost to him today. After a moment of contemplation, Bai Qin took 2 steps forward and picked up the heavily injured Qin Shao. Her figure flashed as she stepped into the air. Just as the two of them left, red light gathered in the original place. Ning Chen walked out and quickly followed. Chapter 651. The Jinsi planet was a prosperous planet of life. The Jinsi divine dynasty ruled the world, and no one dared to disobey the emperor's orders. Emperor Jinsi, who was at the peak of the Ling Lisha realm, used the dynasty's resources to make further progress. He was known as the person most likely to enter the true realm. In the Jinsi imperial city, the 2 divine generals, Bai Qin and Qin Shao, returned. They failed to kill the demon and went to report to the palace. In the Jinsi palace, a powerful figure stood quietly in front of the throne. Golden fate circled around him like a burning flame, dazzling and eye-catching. Your Majesty! Bai Qin went up to the palace and knelt down. Get up. Emperor Jinsi said calmly. Bai Qin got up with a guilty look and said, I'm useless. I couldn't get rid of the demon. 9 divine guards died in battle, and Qin Shao was seriously injured. Emperor Jinsi narrowed his eyes and said, Qin Shao is not weak. Your strength is comparable to the peak of the virtual realm. Even with the help of the 9 divine guards, you still couldn't defeat the demon. The 9th son of the Mo clan suddenly appeared outside the battle. I didn't recognize him. When I tried to stop him, the battle collapsed and we were defeated, Bai Qin answered honestly. The 9th son of the Mo clan? Emperor Jinsi's eyes flashed. The person sent by Mo clan was actually him. Strange. Since you two fought head-on, what was the result? Emperor Jinsi asked. There was no winner. Just as you said, this person can't be treated as an ordinary person. His combat strength is incredible, Bai Qin said seriously. Experience, judgment, and adaptability in battle. This person's tolerance was shocking. He's obviously not a disciple carefully cultivated by a large sect. He's an executioner who killed his way out of the blood wave step by step, Emperor Jinsi said calmly. Bai Qin nodded, thought for a while, and said, There's something else. It's also unusual. What is it? Emperor Jinsi asked. The 9th son of the Mo clan seems to be old friends with the demon. Especially when he mentioned the woman who died in battle, the murderous aura of the 9th son of the Mo clan was not fake, Bai Qin reported. Oh. Hearing this, a strange look appeared on Sovereign Jin Shi's face. This was something worth paying attention to. After thinking for a while, Emperor Jinsi looked at the people below and said, I will pay attention to it. Go back and rest. Don't worry about killing the demon. Yes. Bai Qin respectfully accepted the order and turned to leave. After Bai Qin left, Imperial Lord Jin Shi looked outside the palace. Mo's sect had sent the person who shouldn't have come. However, he wanted to see how strong the 9th disciple of Mo's sect, who had made Hong Luan suffer a great loss, was. On the streets of Jinsi Imperial City, Ning Chen walked with keen air. None of the passers-by paid any attention to these 2 ordinary people. Ning Chen, are you suspecting Sovereign Jin Shi? Asked Yin, puzzled. I can't say that I'm suspicious. Ning Chen shook his head and said, Emperor Jin Shi, since this is the source of the news, regardless of whether this matter is related to him or not, we need to verify it. Also, I think Z will be here soon. But Yin looked puzzled and said, This is Jin Shi Imperial City. With Sovereign Lord Jin Shi here, isn't he courting death by coming here? Demonic nature. Ning Chen sighed softly and said, Demons are the most vengeful race in this world. They wouldn't have let go of their pursuit just like that. If Z had come prepared, even if Sovereign Jean Shi intervened, he might not have been able to stop them. Then when you meet again, will he still recognize you? Asked Yu. He will recognize him, but that doesn't mean he agrees with him. Ningchen looked ahead and said, Z is the same as the demon body and Xian Luo. They are all true demons. They are heartless and emotionless. Once they are angry, it means destruction. No one can stop them. Yin was silent. Her mood was not very good. Ningchen saw through her thoughts and said, don't think too much. The demon body didn't mean to hurt you. Otherwise, he wouldn't have kept you by his side. Although demons are emotionless, they are not without intelligence. Like normal people, they have their own judgment. Can't you save him? Oh looked up and asked expectantly. Ningchen shook his head and said, so far, no one has succeeded. I tried to use Buddhist methods to wash away the demonic nature for Ze, but I failed in the end. Demons are demons just like humans. People's hearts can't change, but the demonic nature is also hard to get rid of. When Yin heard this, she quietly followed beside the person beside her and did not say anything else. Not long after they left, Ning Chen and Tin settled down in an inn not far from Divine General Baiqin's residence in Fulai Inn. The location of their room was directly opposite Divine General Baiqin's residence. After running around for several days, Yin was very tired. When she ate, her eyelids would droop. The little girl, who had always been a glutton, quickly finished her meal and fell asleep on the bed. She was not even in the mood to untie her hair. Seeing that Yin had fallen asleep, Ning Chen went forward to untie her hair so that she could sleep more comfortably. Under the candlelight, the little girl was slender and elegant. She was at the age of blooming, the best time of her life. A trace of emotion flashed through Ning Chen's eyes. Yin had already grown up. Unknowingly, so many years had passed. Without thinking too much, Ning Chen suppressed the emotions in his heart. He walked to the window and looked at Divine General Baiqin's residence not far away. His eyes calmed down again without any changes. The flourishing human world was very similar to the great Xia of the past. 30 years had passed, and the past was like the clouds that could never be returned. After a while, the image of a phoenix appeared in the room. Phoenix flames rose, and a blood-red sword embryo appeared in the flames. After countless days and nights of tempering, it had finally taken the form of a sword. The star soul essence steel that was found in the 7 Kills Palace of the Heavenly Sanctum was unimaginably hard. Even with the refinement of the phoenix flames, it was difficult to temper it. Ningchen did not purposely care about the sword embryo in the phoenix flames. He looked at the residence in front of him under the night sky and waited quietly. The night gradually passed, and nothing happened. When the sky gradually brightened, the phoenix flames dissipated, and the sword embryo in the fire also disappeared. Ningchen closed the window, turned around, and walked to the door. He opened the door and went downstairs. On the first floor, after the sky brightened, customers came down one after another. Ningchen ordered a simple meal for the little girl, and after giving some instructions to the shopkeeper, he walked out of the inn. In front of Divine General Qing Zhao's residence, red clothes appeared. Her appearance was even more obvious, and she instantly entered the residence. In front of the residence, the guards only saw a blur. Before they could react, they could no longer see the figure of the person who had entered. Who is it? In the residence, the hidden expert roared. However, the person seemed to have entered a place where there was no one. In a flash, she had already arrived in Divine General Qing Zhao's room. Inside the room, Divine General Qing Zhao was still unconscious. A beautiful woman was sitting by the bed, taking care of the man on the bed with her clothes untied. Red clothes appeared without any warning. The woman trembled and immediately stood in front of the man on the bed. Just at this moment, a tender voice rang out from outside the room. Shortly after, a small figure appeared and broke the momentary stalemate. Mother! Outside the room, a little boy who was not even 3 years old poked his head out and called out in a childish voice. Unable to sense the abnormal atmosphere in the room, he staggered into the room. The woman's expression changed and she hurriedly shouted, "Don't come in." Hearing the stern reprimand, The little boy trembled and looked at his mother in confusion. His beautiful eyes were filled with tears. Ningchen turned back to look at the little boy. Without saying anything, he looked back at the unconscious figure on the bed. His figure flashed and appeared in front of her. The woman trembled. She wanted to stop him, but it was too late. The blue frost sword appeared, automatically protecting its master. Unexpectedly, the moment they clashed, Red Cloth's sword momentum changed. The yellow springs opened and sealed the blue frost sword. "I'll take this sword with me." As soon as he finished speaking, Red Coat retreated, brushing past him and leaving the room. Not long after Red Clothes left, two old figures appeared in the room. Their powerful auras shook the world. "Where is he?" asked one of the old men. "He's already left," said the woman with a heavy expression. The old man frowned and looked at Qing Shao on the bed. "Is he here for revenge?" "Doesn't look like it." The woman shook her head and said, "He had a chance just now. He could have killed all of us, but he only took the blue frost sword and didn't attack us." "He came for the sword?" The old man narrowed his eyes, feeling puzzled. The blue frost sword was indeed extraordinary. It was one of the 3 famous swords of the Jinsi dynasty. However, it was not normal to choose to steal the sword in broad daylight. "Report what happened today to the Imperial Lord. Also, ask Divine General Bai Qin to come here. White lightning and blue frost can sense each other. Maybe we can find the whereabouts of the person who stole the sword." The other old man said calmly. Ningchen came to the Fulai Inn. On the first floor, was eating. Seeing him come back, she raised her head and smiled brightly. Ningchen walked to the table and sat down. He picked up the bowl, chopsticks, and porridge prepared by the little girl and ate quietly. "Where did you go?" Picked up some vegetables and put them in his bowl. "To steal a sword," Ningchen said honestly. "Oh." Responded softly and didn't care. She continued to ask, "Why did you steal a sword?" "To refine a sword. Also, to cause some trouble for the Jinsi dynasty," Ningchen said softly. At the same time, Divine General Bai Qin appeared in Divine General Qing Zhao's residence. After hearing the woman's detailed description, she couldn't help but frown. Who was it? What was their goal? Or was this person the 9th son of Mahist? The answer was hard to be certain. Bai Qin waved her hand and held the sword. White lightning flashed and intertwined, shooting straight into the sky. Thunder and lightning appeared on a clear day. The sword pressure filled the entire Jinsi dynasty, looking for traces of the blue frost sword. In the Fulai Inn, Ningchen felt the sword pressure from the sky. He ignored it and continued to eat. In Divine General Qing Zhao's residence, after searching for a long time, Bai Qin put away her sword and said, "The blue frost sword is indeed still in the imperial city. However, I can't be sure where it is. The person who stole the sword is not an ordinary person. He sealed the sword's aura. It's very difficult to detect it." Hearing this, the woman sighed softly. She bowed politely and said, "We can't lose the blue frost sword. I'll leave this matter to you, Divine General Bai Qin." "I'll do my best." Divine General Bai Qin nodded and said, "In the Fulai Inn," put down her bowl and chopsticks. She had finished all the food on the table. Not even a grain of rice was left. To the side, the waiter was speechless. He had seen people who could eat, but he had never seen someone who could eat so much. That red-robed youth had clearly not touched his chopsticks much. Chapter 652. Golden flames rose in front of the dragon throne in the Jinsi sacred palace. Sovereign Lord Jinsi, who had gathered the karmic luck of a dynasty, stood there, looking like a divine king. Divine General Bai Qin had come because of what had happened in Divine General Qing Zhao's residence. She half knelt. "You may rise. Have you found out who it was?" asked Sovereign Lord Jinsi. "The person who stole the sword sealed the Azure Frost sword's aura. We can only sense that the sword is still in the dynasty, but we don't know its exact location," reported Divine General Bai Qin. "He didn't injure anyone and left after stealing the sword. It seems that person doesn't have much enmity with the Azure Frost sword. Are there any suspects?" asked Sovereign Lord Jinsi. "My guess is that it was done by Mo Gates' 9th son. However, The portrait provided by the Azure Frost Manor is quite different from what the ninth son looks like, said Divine General Baichin. Mo Gates' ninth son cultivates a special technique that allows him to change his appearance. He was able to fool everyone in the Red Luan realm. Such a small matter shouldn't be difficult for him, said Sovereign Lord Jinsi. If it really was done by Mo Gates' ninth son, why would he choose to steal the sword in broad daylight? With his cultivation base, it's not impossible for him to do it without anyone noticing, frowned Divine General Baichin. Warning, said Sovereign Lord Jinsi. He might be suspecting that woman's death is related to the Jinsi dynasty. If that's really the case, then he might bring us quite a bit of trouble in the future, said Divine General Baichin. Mo Gates' disciples are not ordinary people. If possible, we can't kill him. Otherwise, it'll be hard to explain to Mo Gates' master. Find him and take back the Azure Frost Sword. Have him retreat, said Sovereign Lord Jinsi calmly. What if he insists on resisting? Asked Divine General Baichin. Then there's no need to be lenient. Have Mo Gate take in another disciple, said Sovereign Lord Jinsi indifferently. Understood. Divine General Baichin bowed respectfully and left. The Imperial City, the Heavenly Yuan Pavilion. Ningchen brought in to the bustling Pavilion. Looking at the dazzling array of treasures, he continued to the second floor. What do you want to buy? Asked curiously. Something of extreme coldness, replied Ningchen. Refining a sword is so troublesome. Iner sighed. If the quality of the sword is too poor, it will break easily. The Star Soul essence is a rare material. If it can't be made into a sword in the end, it will be very difficult to find another material of the same grade, explained Ningchen. Where did the Star Soul Mother Steel come from? Iner asked, puzzled. I stole it. Ningchen said honestly. Back on the Heavenly Mansion planet, the Star Soul Mother Steel that he had snatched from the Seven Kills Palace Master had been of great use. While the two of them were talking, they had already arrived at the treasure area on the second floor. As far as their eyes could see, there were all sorts of rare treasures, great medicines, cultivation techniques, and refining materials. Ningchen released his divine sense and scanned the entire second floor. Then he walked towards the furthest corner. You found it? Asked puzzled. Yes. Ningchen replied softly. On the west corner of the second floor, there was a stall that specialized in dealing with divine treasures. All kinds of treasures that had just been unearthed did not look good. Ningchen stepped forward, picked up a rusty iron sword, looked at it, and threw it down. Everything was in a mess, each one more broken than the last. Basically, no one would pick them up even if they were thrown down from the second floor. Divine treasures sounded very tempting, but that was all there was to it. Time was merciless. After thousands of years, even divine materials would become scrap metal. After a long time, Ningchen took out a piece of divine metal that still had spiritual energy. He looked at the old man in front of him and asked, "How much?" 100 pieces of celestial jade. The old man behind the stall looked listlessly at it and said casually, 10 pieces, said Ningchen calmly. Deal, said the old man indifferently. Ningchen paid the celestial jade and put away the divine metal. Then he looked at a broken jade slip that only had 1/10 of it left. He asked, "What is this?" "A divine forbidden technique," said the old man. "What forbidden technique?" asked Ningchen with a frown. "I don't know," said the old man impatiently. "How much?" Ningchen did not ask any more questions. 1,000 pieces of celestial jade, said the old man. 100 pieces, said Ningchen calmly. Take it. The old man waved his hand. Ningchen took out the celestial jade and took the jade slip. I want this. Squatted down and picked up a shiny bracelet. Her little face was full of expectation. 5,000 pieces of celestial jade, said the old man. Ningchen was silent. After a moment he said, 5 pieces. If you don't want it, then I don't want it. Deal, said the old man with satisfaction. Ningchen helplessly paid the celestial jade. He had given the 5 pieces of celestial jade for free. Did I lose out? Asked Iner softly. Not at all. It's quite pretty, said Ningchen gently. The old man smiled and did not say anything. Picking up 5 pieces of celestial jade for free was not bad. Ning Chen's gaze returned to the rusty iron sword. He picked it up and said, "How much for this?" 5,000 pieces of celestial jade. "No bargaining," said the old man calmly. Ning Chen sighed and put down the iron sword. He looked at the stone pearl next to the iron sword and said, "How about this? Buy one, get one free. Not sold separately." The old man narrowed his eyes. 10 pieces of celestial jade. "Only the pearl," said Ning Chen with a frown. "Not selling." The old man bluntly refused. Ning Chen stood up and looked at the little girl beside him. "Let's go." Not far away, a young woman who had been paying attention to the transaction walked over. She smiled and said, "Young master, why are you in such a rush? You can look at other things." "No need." Ning Chen shook his head and left with the little girl. After the two of them left, the woman looked at the old man in front of the stall and bitterly smiled. "Elder you, your item's price is too outrageous. It won't sell like this." The old man faintly smiled. "Divine treasures are all about luck. If the price is too low, no one will buy it. But that young man clearly knows his stuff. The price you gave will only scare him away," said the woman helplessly. "That's true." With that, the old man stood up, picked up the iron sword, and threw it out of the window. Outside Heavenly Yuan Pavilion, Ning Chen sensed something and raised his hand to catch the iron sword. His eyes narrowed slightly. "This sword is for you. 3,000 pieces of celestial jade for the pearl." The old man's voice rang out from the second floor. Ning Chen nodded and said, "I'll take it." With that, Ning Chen brought her back to the second floor of Heavenly Yuan Pavilion. With a wave of his hand, he sent out 3,000 pieces of celestial jade. The boundless spiritual energy immediately attracted several gazes. The old man flipped his hand and swiped across the celestial jade. With a flash of light, the mountain of celestial jade disappeared. The young woman's expression changed. Just who is this young man? He actually spent such a large amount of money on divine treasures that are mostly useless. "Miss, which family's prodigal son is that? He threw away so many celestial jade just like that." Not far from the counter, a pretty girl dressed as a maid looked in front of her in surprise. "Don't speak nonsense." A dignified and elegant woman softly reprimanded her. Then she apologetically nodded at the red-clothed man. She knew that this young man had heard everything just now. Ning Chen nodded in return. He didn't mind. "Young master, is there anything else you need? As long as it's something you like, I can give you a 20% discount," Hua Xian said with a smile. It was rare to see such a straightforward buyer. Ning Chen thought for a moment and said, "I have 2 weapons. I wonder if your pavilion is willing to accept them." The young woman's eyes flashed with surprise. She said, "Young master, please come with me." Ning Chen nodded and followed her within. In a luxuriously decorated room, a middle-aged man was wiping the weapons on the counter. When he saw the 3 of them walk over, he gently wiped his hands and said calmly, "What is it?" "This young master has 2 weapons that he wants to sell. I brought them for you to take a look," replied the young woman. "Oh." The middle-aged man raised his brows. "What weapons?" Ning Chen waved his hand, and a cold saber and a rusty divine spear appeared. The temperature in the room suddenly dropped. The dense killing intent made one's hair stand on end. Seeing the sharp and bone-piercing saber on the table, the middle-aged man's eyes flickered. He said, "Young master, how much do you want to sell these 2 weapons?" "For the saber, 2,000 immortal jades. As for the spear, it's only for exchange," said Ning Chen. The middle-aged man frowned. "I can accept the saber, but as for the spear, forgive me for being blunt. This spear should have come from a divine treasury. Perhaps it was once priceless, but now..." The man didn't say the rest, but it was self-evident. The probability of a divine treasury giving away a treasure was too low. Especially weapons, most of them were just scrap metal. "Let's go." Ning Chen didn't say anything else. He directly put away the 2 weapons and walked out. The woman's expression became anxious, but the middle-aged man shook his head, indicating for her not to stop him. Once the 2 of them left, the middle-aged man turned back to tidy up the weapons on the counter. He said, "The saber isn't bad, but the spear is truly worthless. It's not worth spending a large amount of money to buy it." Wrong. At this moment, the old man walked over and said indifferently, 2,000 immortal jades for that saber is too expensive. That spear is a true priceless treasure. When the two of them returned to the Fortune Inn, the sky had already darkened. The sky that had been clear for several days was now covered in dark clouds. Thunder rumbled, as if a heavy rain was coming. Wanted to eat something, so Ningchen returned to his room first. With a wave of his hand, he took out the divine restriction jade slip he had bought today. He probed it with his spiritual sense to see if there were any changes to the restrictions within. After probing for a long time, he wasn't able to discover much. Only a tenth of the extremely damaged jade slip remained. It was far from enough to restore the original appearance of the restrictions. Yellow springs, passing time, immortal execution. The many divine restrictions that had shaken the world in the ancient era had basically been lost. The restrictions within the jade slip weren't as complicated as the previous three. Ningchen didn't waste any more time. He put away the jade slip and took out the stone bead. With a flip of his hand, he shattered it. In that instant, silver light filled his eyes. The stone bead dissipated, and in its final moment, it erupted with an intense chill. It had once been a rare treasure, but after the corrosion of time, there wasn't much remaining energy left. Cold chi erupted, followed by phoenix flames. Within the flames, a blood-red sword floated up and down, absorbing the cold chi and tempering its edge. The cold chi spread, tempering the edge of the sword. When it ran out of energy, the blue frost sword appeared and the yellow springs restriction opened. The instant the cold chi spread, restrictions appeared once more, sealing the sword. At this moment, in a nearby residence, Divine General Baiqin suddenly opened her eyes, the light in her eyes bursting forth. Chapter 653. In the Golden Dawn Sacred Hall, Imperial Lord Golden Dawn stood in front of the dragon throne. Golden flames floated around him. Below the hall, Divine General Baiqin bowed respectfully. He had come because of what had happened in Divine General Qin Zhao's residence. In the Divine General's residence, Baiqin stood up and looked ahead. Surprise flashed through his eyes. The blue frost sword had finally appeared again. Stepping out, Divine General Baiqin summoned the white lightning sword with a flip of his hand. He poured his vital essence in and immediately, lightning shot into the sky, resonating with the Xian thunder of the 9 heavens. With the help of the heavenly thunder, the white lightning sword shone brightly. The lightning that ran through the world spread and the sword pressure covered the entire dynasty. On the second floor of the Fortune Inn, the blue frost sword trembled violently in the phoenix fire, resonating with the white lightning sword. Ningchen looked at the sky and flipped his palm. Within the phoenix fire, the blood-red sword embryo hummed. He used the sword to seal the sword and forcefully suppressed the blue frost sword. This was a battle of swords. Although it was not a direct confrontation, it was still extremely intense. Less than 1,000 feet away, the two top experts, one in the light and one in the dark, faced off against each other in a battle of swords. After a moment of stalemate, Ning Chen's aura surged. Within the phoenix fire appeared and engulfed the blue frost sword. The aura on the sword immediately disappeared. In the sky, Divine General Baiqin sensed this and his eyes focused. Boom! The 9 heavens rumbled and dark clouds roiled. Rain poured down, immediately enveloping the entire imperial city in the coldness of the autumn rain. Divine General Baiqin sighed softly. He withdrew his aura and slowly descended. Suddenly, the wind blew and the rain splashed. A white-haired figure in black robes strode over. His extremely powerful aura was shocking. Divine General Baiqin was taken aback and his pupils constricted. The demonic cultivator in front was dragging an azure-robed figure in his hand. He left bloody marks on the ground that were washed away by the rain and gradually dispersed. Qing Shao! Divine General Baiqin was furious and the killing intent in his eyes was difficult to suppress. The demonic cultivator formed a demonic seal and sealed it into Divine General Qing Zhao's body. He then waved his hand and tossed him to the side. He said indifferently, "Don't worry, he's not dead yet. However, if someone interferes, you can collect his corpse." Divine General Bai Qin's killing intent surged. He stepped forward and charged. The white lightning was unsheathed, and the lightning flashed. The Jin Shi divine weapon once again shone with a peerless sharpness. However, the demonic cultivator was not afraid at all. Amidst the surging demonic aura, a demonic sword engraved with strange patterns appeared. The moment he held the sword, thunder from the ninth heaven came crashing down. Demons were abandoned by the heavens and were not allowed to exist in this world. Bolts of lightning landed on the bodies of the demons, wanting to exterminate the demons of the human world. "Noisy!" The demon cultivator shouted coldly. The demon chi around him soared into the sky and dispersed the lightning. The two swords clashed, and the raging waves collided with each other. Lightning and devil chi consumed each other, and the frightening aftershocks rapidly spread out. The two experts fought. Above the sacred hall, the light was extremely dazzling. The figure of an emperor shrouded in golden flames appeared. He raised his hand and stabilized the surging heaven and earth. Emperor Jinxi appeared. On the ground, the unconscious divine General Qing Shao rose and flew towards the royal palace. In the battle, the demonic cultivator sneered and did not stop him. Chapter 654. Above the palace, Imperial Lord Jin Shi gathered yuan and poured it into Divine General Qing Zhao's body. In an instant, imprints exploded and demonic qi surged, spreading through the latter's meridians. Seeing this, the Imperial Lord stopped and frowned. What a strange demonic imprint. After thinking for a while, Imperial Lord Jin Shi looked at the battle and said, "Kill him and the demonic imprint in Qing Zhao's body will be removed." The battle separated. In the pouring rain, the divine General Bai Qin calmly accepted the order. With a flip of her left hand, thousands of bolts of lightning streaked across her sword. In an instant, the white lightning was as dazzling as the stars, illuminating the nine heavens. In the imperial city, countless people felt the pressure from the sky and knelt on the ground, trembling. The divine general attacked. Thunder rumbled and howled. The demonic cultivator focused and his sword rotated. Demonic chi surged and strengthened the sword. The divine sword and demonic sword clashed. The demonic cultivator took half a step back, his mouth red. On the other side, Divine General Bai Qin was also injured. His blood chi surged violently. Sky-burning demonic flame. Blood flowed like flames. The demonic cultivator roared, his white hair flying wildly. Demonic flame burned the sky and boiled the sea. The shocking demonic flame covered the entire sky. In the demonic flame, the rain turned into white mist. The demonic cultivator moved. His sword aura was even stronger than before. He slashed with his sword. With a thump, the divine general Bai Qin swung her sword to block the attack. White lightning wailed. In the clash between the two swords, it was the demonic sword that won. "Back off." Divine General Bai Qin's face sank. His true essence surged and strengthened his sword aura. He pushed the demonic cultivator away and stepped into the nine heavens. He stood under the thunderclouds. White lightning flashed and gathered the thunder from all directions. The demonic sword of the nine heavens appeared. Qilin. Lightning manifested and a Qilin descended. The earth-shattering sword move destroyed the void within 100 miles. The heavens sensed it and trembled. The sword move was extremely fast and powerful. The demonic cultivator's eyes turned cold. The demonic flames around him gathered like a tide, forming a protective shield in front of him. The demonic flames dissipated and the lightning passed through his body. The demonic cultivator grunted and blood flowed from his mouth. The might of the immortal trampling divine general was immeasurable. The powerful demonic cultivator finally showed signs of defeat. Above the palace, Emperor Jin Shi watched the battle calmly. Because he was worried about Divine General Qing Zhao's safety, he did not intervene. He believed that Divine General Bai Qin was strong enough to deal with this demon. Although they were both divine General Jin Shi, Bai Qin was undoubtedly more powerful than Qing Xiao. With the help of the White Lightning Godly Sword, there were few who could match her in the emptiness realm. The strongest divine general dared to block 100 men. In the sky, in the battle, the situation was tipping. The demonic cultivator was dyed red, but the coldness in his eyes did not diminish in the slightest. His sword swept across as if it was light. Mad Doomsday! The demonic cultivator spoke. The heavens and earth were solemn. In an instant, there was silence. The oppressive atmosphere made it seem as if space itself had stopped. A moment later, a terrifying demonic aura swept out. Thunder and lightning from the ninth heaven rumbled. The demonic sword in the demonic cultivator's hand changed. The sword body and hilt continued to grow. A black aura spread out and coiled around the sword body. The moment the doomsday weapon, the sword of God crossing, appeared, the extreme power on the sword vibrated violently. The thunder and lightning dissipated instantly. In the rolling demonic aura, the doomsday demonic weapon, which was more than 7 feet long, appeared. The sword body and the hilt each occupied half of the sword body. The dazzling black light was abnormally dazzling. Seeing the demonic sword in the demonic cultivator's hand, Divine General Bai Qin's eyes narrowed. She circulated her vital energy and was on full alert. The demonic cultivator arrived. The mad doomsday sword slashed across the sky, turning into a dazzling black light. Before she could react, the sword light had already arrived. Divine General Bai Qin blocked with her sword, but she felt an irresistible force pressing down on her. It was as if the heavens and earth were pressing down on her, extremely heavy. With a loud sound, the Divine General fell and crashed into the ground. Seeing that the situation was unfavorable, Emperor Jin Shi's expression darkened. Finally, he could not wait any longer. He stepped out and instantly joined the battle. His palm was powerful. Golden flames surged and drowned out the demonic flames. The Emperor's aura shocked the heavens and the earth. The demonic cultivator waved his sword and released golden flames. The sword edge met the attack. With a loud sound, the demonic cultivator retreated several steps. Blood flowed out and dyed the hand holding the sword red. A peak corporeal realm expert was unrivaled. Your interference is extremely foolish. The demonic cultivator snorted coldly. His eyes flashed. In the distance, above the palace, a waterfall of blood exploded. Divine General Qing Zhao's entire body exploded, turning into bloody bones that scattered in all directions. No! On the ground, Divine General Bai Qin staggered to her feet. Looking at the rain of blood in the distance, her eyes instantly turned blood red. How dare you! Emperor Jin Shi was furious. He stepped forward and the wind and clouds changed in his palm. Seeing this, the demonic cultivator's expression did not change. He half knelt, and black demonic chi surged around him. The image of a demonic god appeared, and the pressure of the 9 heavens and 10 earths roared out. On the second floor of Fulai Inn, Ning Chen's pupils shrank when he saw the image of a demonic god appear in the sky. His calm expression changed for the first time. How is this possible? In the battle, the image of a demonic god appeared. The moment it opened its eyes, the golden chi around the demonic cultivator rapidly dissipated. It was actually forcefully suppressed by the demonic god's aura. Emperor Jin Shi's face darkened, and he pushed his palm even more. Suddenly, the golden chi in the depths of the palace rushed into the sky like an ocean, supporting the demonic cultivator. The demonic cultivator and the demonic cultivator clashed. The image of a demonic god shook the 1,000 years of Jinsi dynasty's chi. Rumbling, the 9 heavens sank, and terrifying waves continued to spread. In the aftermath, the image of a demonic god dissipated. More than half of the Jinsi dynasty's chi around the demonic cultivator also dissipated. The demonic cultivator was hit with a deadly palm. The demonic sword blocked the palm power, and the demonic cultivator was forced back a few steps. He was severely injured. On the other side, Emperor Jin Shi's mouth also turned red after receiving the backlash of the image of a demonic god. He could not believe that the demonic cultivator had injured a peak corporeal realm expert. In 100 years, you are the first person to injure me. I admire you. Emperor Jin, she said coldly. He turned his palm and condensed the chi of Jinsi dynasty again. Majestic golden flames rose rapidly. This was a demon-slaying technique. Sky Dragon Shock. At this moment, a red figure appeared in the battle. A white light appeared, and an azure dragon roared and crashed into the demonic cultivator. Retreat. After one move, Ning Chen's figure flashed and quickly left with the heavily injured Xiazi. In the battle, the azure dragon sword chi attacked. Emperor Jin Shi's eyes narrowed. He turned his palm and dispersed the sword chi. When he focused again, the demonic cultivator was already gone. The ninth son of Mahist sect. Emperor Jin Shi's eyes flashed coldly. It was indeed this kid who ruined it. On the ground, seeing the enemy leave, Divine General Bai Qin was so anxious that he staggered and vomited blood again. Seeing this, Emperor Jin Shi's figure flashed and instantly appeared below. He poured his true yuan into the general and forcibly stabilized his injuries. Thank you, Emperor, Divine General Bai Qin said weakly. Emperor Jin Shi nodded. He looked forward and said coldly, I was too careless. This demonic cultivator's power is beyond imagination, especially that weapon and the image of a demonic god. They are too powerful. They don't seem to belong to the human world. I have to avenge Qing Shao, Divine General Bai Qin said in a low voice. Recuperate first. Wait for me to contact Master Mo. We will discuss this. I want to see how Master Mo will give me an explanation for what happened today. Emperor Jin, she said coldly. 1,000 miles to the west of Jinsi dynasty, Ning Chen appeared with Xiazi. Without saying anything, he turned his palm and condensed his chi. Majestic phoenix chi poured into the latter's body to help him suppress his injuries. On the side, O looked nervously at the demonic cultivator in front of her. Her big eyes were full of vigilance. After a few breaths, Ning Chen stopped and withdrew his true yuan. In front of him, the demonic cultivator slowly opened his eyes. Chapter 655. On the western side of the imperial city, the demon opened his eyes. Killing intent circulated around him, but when he looked back, he was completely emotionless. The demon turned around and waved his sword. The cold sword light was extremely dazzling. Ning Chen caught the demon's sword. He looked at the person in front of him and said, Friend, you don't even trust me? Long time no see, knowing Marquis. The demon cultivator put away his sword. Long time no see. Ning Chen sighed. I will remember your kindness for saving me today. We'll meet again if fate allows. With that, Xiazi walked forward without any hesitation. Fei, where is she now? Ning Chen calmly asked as he looked at the demon cultivator's back. Xiazi's body trembled. Killing intent surged around him. He coldly said, I don't know. Perhaps she's dead. Ning Chen clenched his fists. His figure flashed, and his sword pressed forward. The two swords clashed. White light and the wild apocalypse collided. Sword currents surged, instantly destroying the surrounding wilderness. If she's dead, why are you still alive? Ning Chen coldly asked. The demon cultivator turned his palm and condensed his devil yuan. He slammed his palm down, his power shaking the heavens. Ning Chen condensed his phoenix yuan and met the demon cultivator's attack head-on. With a bang, the two sides separated. The demon cultivator coldly said, because the one who should die isn't dead yet. Ning Chen put away his sword. He looked forward and said, At this moment, who else can you trust besides me? Xiazi was silent. After a long time, he said, She said that if someone wanted to save her, it could only be me. Luo Fei is kind and doesn't want to implicate anyone. But with the strength of those coffin bearers, can you save her by yourself? Ning Chen coldly asked. Since you already know who did it, you should know how dangerous those people are. Not getting involved is the safest choice for you. Furthermore, do you still have the energy to care about other people's affairs? Xiazi said coldly. Reviving the ghost girl isn't something that can be done in a short time. But Luo Fei's matter can't be delayed. Those people must have some other goal for taking her away. When we meet again, I hope to see the eternal night sect's disciple alive, not a corpse, Ningchen said. Do you think I can trust you? Xiazi asked coldly. You can only trust me. Xiazi, I know that demons tend to be suspicious, but you have no other choice, Ningchen slowly said. At the same time, in the Jin Shi sacred palace, golden flames rose. Emperor Jin Shi stood quietly in front of the dragon throne, looking at the void of the palace, waiting for someone to come. Moments later, the seven-colored light gathered above the void, and a white-robed shadow appeared, descending upon the Jinshi dynasty. Master Mo. Sovereign Jin Shi looked at the person in front of him and said lightly. Emperor Lord, you must have summoned me here for something important. Just say it. Mo Zhu said calmly. Lord Mo, you should have heard of the devil calamity on Galistar, said Empress Jin Shi. That's right. I've already sent Old Nine here. Has the Emperor Lord not seen him yet? Mo Zhu asked. I did. However, your disciple saved the devil fetus. Shouldn't you give me an explanation? Said Empress Jinshi coldly. Mo Zhu frowned and said, Emperor Lord, did you recognize the wrong person? Or did someone impersonate Old Nine to frame Mo Gate? Are you doubting my judgment, Master Mo? Overlord Jinshi asked coldly. Emperor Lord, you're exaggerating. Mo Zhu replied, then continued, Emperor Lord, don't worry. If this is really Old Nine's doing, I'll definitely give you a satisfactory explanation. I hope so, said Emperor Jin Shi indifferently. I'll deal with this matter as soon as possible. I won't disturb you any longer. Farewell. As soon as he finished speaking, the seven-colored light in the void dissipated, and Mo Zhu's figure faded and disappeared. Looking at the empty palace, a strange light flashed in Emperor Jin Shi's eyes. Master of Mo Gate, this time, what will you choose? In the wilderness to the west of the dynasty, the two friends who had been through life and death for 20 years finally met again. There was no greeting, only a tense confrontation. Lu Fei had been taken away when she was on the verge of death, so it was almost impossible for her to be alive. However, this was the only thing holding them back. Where did these people come from? Asked Ningchen. I don't know. They suddenly appeared and disappeared. There were 13 of them in total, and each of them carried a coffin on their back. Each of them was above the treading immortal realm, said Xiazi. Hearing this, Ningchen pondered silently. There had never been such an organization in the Red Phoenix Star Zone. It was impossible for a sect with so many treading immortal realm experts to remain unknown. The only explanation was that these people were not from the Red Phoenix Star Zone. Don't think too much. The nearby star zones belong to the Jinshi dynasty. These people appeared and caused such a big commotion. Emperor Jin Shi must have known about it. So far, the Jinshi dynasty hasn't done anything. There must be a secret behind it. Since we can't find it, we'll eliminate them one by one, said Xiazi with killing intent in his eyes. So, you killed all the people in the Jinshi dynasty's territory who might be related, even those who might be innocent, said Ningchen in a deep voice. What's wrong? Are you moved by compassion? Jiming Marquis, put away your useless kindness. You saved the world, but how will the world repay you? Heroes have always been synonymous with sorrow since ancient times. The world doesn't need heroes, Xiazi mocked. Ningchen was silent. He didn't answer. Ninth brother, what are you doing? At this moment, the wind and clouds in the sky began to swirl. A white-robed figure walked out. A powerful and strange pressure descended, causing the three of them to feel heavy. Seeing this person, Ningchen's expression sank. How was this possible? How did Master Mo know where he was? Ninth brother, have you forgotten the mission I gave you? Kill this devil and then apologize to Sovereign Jin Shi. If you do that, I'll pretend this matter never happened, said Mo Zhu. Impossible, said Ningchen as he pulled in behind him. Then you're going to disobey my orders, said Master Mo coldly. Xiazi, let's go. Knowing that Master Mo's strength was unfathomable, Ningchen didn't want to waste any more time. His figure flashed, and he quickly left with the two of them. You can't leave, said Master Mo coldly. His figure scattered, disappearing from the sky. flying rapidly through the night sky. A stream of light flashed by as it traversed 1,000 miles, 10,000 miles. The phoenix's extreme speed brought the two of them far away from the danger. However, Master Emo seemed to know their whereabouts. Not long after they stopped, a 7-colored light would appear. There's no need to run. Haven't you sensed it? Your aura can't escape his senses. 10,000 miles away, Xiaozi looked at the 7-colored light behind them. Devils, a race with no value at all. He then looked at his disciple and said, "Ninth brother, you've really disappointed me." Ning Chen's expression sank. As expected, there was a problem with the Sun True Scripture in his body. Fortunately, the Sun True Scripture in his devil body had already been transferred. Otherwise, he really would have been in danger. Phoenix Flame soared, attempting to destroy the Sun True Scripture. However, the Sun True Scripture suddenly awakened on its own, forcibly resisting the Phoenix Flames. After failing to destroy the Sun True Scripture, Ning Chen's expression became even more grave. This was troublesome. You want to destroy your own body? Ninth brother, you betrayed Mo Gate and protected this devil. Your choice has infuriated me. It seems that letting you leave the mountain this time has made you forget the etiquette of respecting your master, said Master Mo coldly. Ning Chen ignored him and held Yiner's hand. He glanced at Xiaozi and said, "Be careful. If you can't pass this trial, you'll really be buried here." Xiaozi focused and said, "Your foundation is lacking. I'll block it. Take this chance to attack its weak point." Sure. Ning Chen nodded. Betraying your master and betraying the Tao? How foolish. Master Mo raised his hand, and the 7-colored immortal technique appeared once more. In an instant, the night sky was filled with a rainbow light. Xiaozi waved his hand, and the devil sword changed. The berserk apocalypse appeared. Powerful devil chi surged, blocking the immortal technique. The immortal technique shook the devil's might. The devil was forced back several steps, and the devil chi around him violently shook. Samsara! The devil sword pierced the ground, and thousands of sword lights soared into the sky. The cycle was endless, and it swept toward the illusory figure floating in the void. Waning moon. Master Mo raised his hand again, and a black moon appeared in the world. Black and white intertwined, and an imperfection appeared in the midst of the perfection. The earth-shattering celestial technique froze heaven and earth. After a moment of silence, a frightening scene appeared. The sword light that filled the sky dissipated, and the demonic cultivator's body began to crack from his left arm along with the incomplete full moon, gradually spreading out. The might of the immortal technique appeared again, and it was difficult for humans to block it. The devil endured the pain and half knelt down. The devil chi around him surged, and the image of a god and devil appeared behind him. Its aura surpassed the limits of the human world, and the whole world shook. The devil god appeared, and the devil chi shook violently. The immortal technique collapsed, and Master Mo's body flickered, and he retreated half a step. The moment Master Mo retreated, the phoenix appeared. In an instant, the red dress appeared in front of him, and the white sword chased after his soul. Master Mo squinted his eyes, and he turned his palm to block the sword. 7 colors rose, and the white sword couldn't move an inch. Seeing this, Xiaozi stepped forward. The devil chi of the apocalypse was vast and mighty, and it supported the knowing destiny state. Your cooperation is not bad, but you are too weak. Master Mo condensed vast origin in his palm, and the two were sent flying. He raised his right hand again, and the immortal technique appeared again. Awakening moon, 7 rainbow berries the sun. The immortal technique appeared, and the power of the laws within hundreds of miles swirled crazily. In the void, an illusory divine sun appeared, and in an instant, it collapsed and swallowed the 3 people below. The might of the divine sun was unavoidable. The devil stepped forward, and the black feathers of the devil god behind him fluttered. The 12 wings of sin spread out, and in an instant, the wings of sin appeared behind the devil, and the destructive power of the devil spread rapidly. Behind him, Ning Chen's pupils shrank. The familiar wings of sin, the most terrifying memory. When the wings of sin appeared, the devil's cultivation rose rapidly, and the doomsday weapon appeared in the sky, blocking the immortal technique again. With a bang, blood splattered, and the devil retreated. The red dress rushed out at the moment they passed each other, and it was extremely fast. As soon as the immortal technique appeared, the old force was exhausted, and before the new force could rise, the white sword broke through the seven-colored barrier and penetrated his body. Ugh! With a groan, Master Mo retreated half a step, and the aura of his body shook violently. After a moment, he endured the injury and turned his palm. The red dress flew out and landed on the ground, stumbling and vomiting blood. Chapter 656. In the battle under the night, the king and the Marquis fought against Mo. This was the first time they worked together since the battle of sending off the gods. The brilliance in the moonlight, the sword tip was fast and the sword tip was heavy. They cooperated with each other to fight for a way out. Mo, who had a shocking cultivation base, came here in his human form, but he already displayed terrifying strength. His every move was filled with immortal arts, suppressing the phoenix demon. The unshakable enemy fought to the climax. The demonic and knowing destiny's bodies were already red. Their sword-wielding hands were bleeding. Immortal art, joys and sorrows. Mo raised his hand, and the black moon and white sun appeared in the world. The sun and moon appeared in the sky, and a terrifying aura erupted. Suddenly yin and yang intersected and were annihilated at the same time. The destructive power swept over. The demonic aura around the demonic cultivator was activated, and the demonic aura around him surged out. It turned into black wings of sin and spread in front of him, blocking the immortal art. When the immortal art and the demon art collided, everything fell. In the rumbling, the white rainbow fought for life. With a piercing sound, the sword was dyed in vermilion red. The extremely fast sword, with its speed supporting its sword might, broke through layer after layer of seven-colored multicolored light, once again piercing through the sword wound on Mo's chest. Ugh! Mo grunted and raised his hand to point at the former. Suddenly, the wind and clouds changed, and seven-colored lights shone. Invisible sword! Ningchen seemed to be unaware of the immortal art. The sword tip in his hand kept spinning, concentrating and concentrating. Countless sword intents gathered on the sword, breaking through the obstruction and penetrating further. With a bang, the sword tip entered the body. The seven-colored immortal art was activated at the same time. In an instant, the demonic cultivator's palm force arrived and blocked the fatal move. Terrifying waves shook violently, and the battle was shaken apart again. The two flew out and vomited blood when they landed. In the aftermath, Mo's aura was violently unstable. The sword intent on the sword wound on his chest was in a frenzy, constantly eroding his body. You've done well. Next, it's time to end this battle. Mo raised his hand and touched the wound, forcibly suppressing the sword wound. Immediately, the black and white aura around him surged rapidly. The power of yin and yang swept in all directions, and the shocking power covered the 9 heavens and the moon. The ultimate move descended, and the power was shocking. Within hundreds of miles, a large area of the ground was overturned. Crisscrossing cracks spread continuously, and the doomsday scene made people tremble. With the appearance of the yin-yang celestial art, Ning Chen's extreme yang body was completely suppressed. The sun scripture was activated and actually restrained his body. With the imminent danger, Xia Zi gathered all of his demonic qi and infused it into the demonic sword. The sinful wings spread out behind his back, and the black feathers fluttered in the wind. Endless demonic qi overflowed, aiding his attack. Demon sword, bury the heavens. The heaven-burying sword soared into the sky and immediately slashed open the world. The full power of the demonic cultivator's sword was beyond the limit, splitting mountains and splitting seas. The moment the immortals and demons clashed, the heaven-burying sword shattered. The demon flew out, covered in blood. He was severely injured again. Seeing that the battle was in danger, Ningchen let out a deep shout and no longer cared about anything else. The phoenix flames around his body rapidly rose, and within the flames, a blood-red sword embryo appeared. The incomplete sword did indeed have an indescribable sword pressure that was faintly discernible. With the astral soul iron essence as its foundation, the sword that had been tempered by the extreme cold and phoenix flames emitted a biting cold light that illuminated the world. His right hand clenched into a fist as his astral soul manifested, causing the heavens and earth to tremble. Above the 9 heavens, the dark clouds were dyed red by the swordlight. Muffled sounds of thunder could be heard as everyone was shocked by the appearance of an astral soul. With the astral soul in his hand, the swordlight spread out and descended upon the world. Upon seeing this, Emoju turned his palm and blocked the swordlight. With a loud bang, the black and white aura shook violently. The transformed body that was hit by the devil aura and phoenix origin trembled violently once again, showing signs of instability. Ningchen stepped forward, his figure moving with extreme speed. 2 swords shone, chasing after the soul and reaping life. Old 9, you have been hiding for so long, just for today? Emoju turned his palm to block the swordlight and immediately raised his hand to point at the tip of the astral soul sword. Ningchen pulled out his sword and turned around. The phoenix spread its wings, drawing the most dazzling sword rainbow in the night sky. Within the sword rainbow, the yin and yang aura protected his body, constantly blocking the swordlight. Emoju was as immovable as a mountain. His aura circulated around him as he blocked the swordlight again and again. It's a pity to have such a cultivation base. A strange light flashed in Emoju's eyes. He raised his right hand again. Instantly, the wind and clouds gathered, and black and white auras swirled rapidly. The yin-yang immortal technique appeared in the world once again. An extreme pressure swept over. Black feathers gathered, forming a barrier in front of him. The Devil Sword and the Astral Soul Sword joined hands to block the attack. With a loud bang, they both retreated a few steps. Compared to back then, your foundation is actually so weak now. Xiazi raised his hand to wipe the blood from the corner of his mouth. There is no such thing as a perfect situation in the world. Friend, can you still hold on? Ningchen asked solemnly. Full of fighting spirit, Xiazi said coldly. Ningchen nodded and looked forward. Emoju is only here with his incarnation, so he can't hold on for too long. However, we don't seem to be able to hold on for too long either. Let's end this quickly. That's what I'm thinking. Xiazi agreed. Black feathers fluttered around his body, and demonic aura surged on his 6-foot-long sword. His true origin erupted as he bet on his last move. Ningchen also gathered his phoenix aura. His 2 swords spun, and 9 suns appeared. The martial arts of the heavenly book appeared. The rising phoenix aura and demonic aura flowed into the sky. The ultimate move cut open the night sky and descended upon the world. Emoju raised his hand and the immortal technique appeared again. Suddenly, the aura around him dissipated rapidly. Without any warning, half of his power dissipated. The ultimate move descended, and the void suddenly split open. The terrifying remaining power swallowed everything within 100 miles. Amidst the chaos, the 2 of them retreated several steps. They looked forward with solemn expressions. There was no one left in the void. They didn't know what had happened at the last moment. Since you're still alive, I'm relieved. At this moment, a calm voice rang out in the distance. Under the bleak moonlight, a green-robed woman walked over. She had a delicate appearance, but she didn't seem to be older than 20. She was elegant and quiet. The arrival of an unfamiliar person in the wilderness caused the 2 of them, who had just experienced a great battle, to calm down once more. There's no need to be nervous, 9th junior apprentice brother. I didn't think we would meet so soon, said the green-robed woman. You are. Ningchen's eyes flashed with a strange light. Lua. Or you can call me 4th senior apprentice sister, said Lua calmly. Ningchen's expression shook. How was that possible? Are you doubting my identity? Lulua raised her hand, and rays of green light spread out. The 2 of them immediately felt as if they had sunk into a swamp. A moment later, Lulua waved her hand to disperse the green light. She calmly said, Are you still doubting me? Ningchen suppressed his shock and bowed. He politely said, "Fourth senior apprentice sister. Let's go. If you have any questions, you can follow me back. As for you, it's up to you whether you come or not." After saying this, Luluo glanced at the demon beside Ningchen and didn't say anything else. She turned and left. Ningchen looked at his friend and said, "Let's go. Let's find a place to heal first and then discuss the future." Xiazi nodded and remained silent. The three of them followed. After walking for a long time, looked at the woman's back. A moment later, she raised her head. Her eyes were filled with anticipation. She asked, "Ningchen, is it possible that big sister Ling Luo is still alive?" Ningchen sighed and shook his head. The possibility isn't high. Luo's eyes dimmed when she heard this. She didn't ask any more questions. Yanji City was an ordinary small city several thousand miles away from the Jinsi dynasty. In the eastern part of the city, Luluo brought the three of them to a quiet mansion. After settling the three of them down, Luluo looked at the red-robed youth and calmly said, "It's safe here. You can heal here. I'll go get some medicine for you." Fourth senior apprentice sister. Ningchen frowned. He was just about to speak when he was interrupted. "If you have anything to say, wait until I come back with the medicine." After saying this, Luluo turned and left. Her attitude was neither cold nor warm, causing Ina's heart to pound. "Do you trust her?" asked Xiazi coldly. "At the very least, she doesn't have a direct conflict of interest with us," said Ningchen calmly. Xiazi narrowed her eyes. A moment later, she walked to the side and closed her eyes to heal. "We'll leave our safety to you. If there's any trouble, just call for help," said Ningchen softly as he rubbed her hair. "Okay." Nodded her head vigorously and agreed. After saying those words, Ningchen walked over to the side and sat down to recuperate from his injuries. After exchanging blows with sovereign monarch Jin Shi and Mo Zhu in a single night, the injuries that he had accumulated were already severe. If he didn't recuperate quickly, he would be in deep trouble. Una ran to the table and brought a small stool over. She sat at the door and acted as if she was protecting the two of them. An hour later, Luluo returned with a pile of jade bottles in her hands. She pushed the door open and saw the little girl sitting at the door. "Come and help me." Immediately stood up and took a portion of the jade bottles. She asked curiously, "Are they going to finish all of this?" Luluo raised her head and glanced at the little girl. "Half of this is poison." Then his hands trembled and she almost spilled all the bottles. "Be careful," Luluo reminded her. She placed the bottles on the table and opened them one by one. After smelling the medicine, she placed them to the side. "Why isn't there a label on the bottle?" asked Ine. "I can recognize it." "Why would there be a label?" asked Luluo calmly. Was speechless. She almost went crazy. Why was it that no one related to Ningchen was normal? Except for herself. After Luluo finished identifying the medicine, she took an empty bottle and poured out a different amount of medicine from each bottle. She then handed it to the little girl. "This belongs to that demon." Hearing this, took the medicine bottle and carefully walked to Xiazi, who was not far away. After putting down the medicine bottle, she quickly walked back. Luluo continued to make medicine. Each bottle had a different smell and color. Just looking at it made people dizzy. "Sister Luluo, isn't half of the poison here?" Seeing that Luluo had basically used all the medicine, asked in fear. "Medicine is 30% poisonous. All medicine in the world is poisonous. These medicines are just a bit more poisonous. However, a stronger poison means that the medicine is also stronger. Ordinary medicine won't be able to help with their injuries," said Luo. "Nothing will happen, right?" asked Ina worriedly. "I can't guarantee that nothing will happen to others if they take these medicines, but..." At this point, Lulua's tone changed. "If they take it, they won't die even if they want to." Chapter 657. East of Yanji City, a bright moon hung high in the sky. The demon cultivator stood in the courtyard of a quiet mansion, looking at the horizon. His expression was as cold and silent as ever, without the slightest trace of human emotion. The kind-hearted emperor had left and never returned. From the moment the people of the Grand Xia betrayed their emperor, everything was irreparable. The coldness of a person's heart would always hurt the person who cherished them the most. Not far away, Ningchen walked over and threw a jar of wine over. He calmly said, "What are you thinking about?" "Revenge," Xia Zi coldly said as he caught the jar. "Finding those people's whereabouts won't be easy. Recover first, then we'll discuss it," said Ningchen gravely. "I know what to do. You should think about your own matters. That Master Mo's strength is definitely not an ordinary corporeal realm expert. I really don't know how you could let yourself fall into such a dangerous situation with your wisdom," said Xia Zi as he opened the jar and took a sip. "He's the person closest to the true realm in this world. Perhaps he knows a secret method of resurrection that others don't." Ningchen also took a sip of wine. A burning sensation rushed up his throat, making his injured body feel a bit better. "After cultivating for so long, do you really believe that there's a method of resurrection in this world?" Xia Zi turned around and mocked. "I don't." Ningchen shook his head. "Then why are you so persistent?" asked Xia Zi coldly. "A miracle." Ningchen took another sip and softly said, "Perhaps the current me is just a frog at the bottom of a well. I can't see the true sky." Xia Zi sneered, "Jiming Marquis, how long are you going to lie to yourself? Have you ever lived for yourself in this life? First it was the Grand Xia, then it was the Divine Prefecture, and now it's the Ghost Girl. You don't like fighting, but you became the martial Marquis of the Grand Xia. You're not suited for cultivation, but you still managed to reach the human sovereign realm. How far do you want to go? Treading immortal, true immortal, or God? Do you still remember what that woman from the desolate city you liked looked like?" Ningchen was silent. He drank mouthful after mouthful of wine to numb the pain in his body. "How many years has it been?" asked Xia Zi as he looked at the sky. 20 years, replied Ningchen. "Did she say anything in the end?" asked Xia Zi. "No." Ningchen shook his head. "Jiming Marquis, if I die one day, please bury my bones beside her. I was unable to be filial when I was alive, so I'll go to the Yellow Springs to apologize after I die," Xia Zi said indifferently. "The Empress has never blamed you. Now that Xang Yu is by her side, it's enough. If you want to die, you should wait until you rescue Luofei. The debt you owe must be paid first, right?" Ningchen smiled with a complex expression. "I hope that one day we'll walk together on the road to the Yellow Springs," Xia Zi said indifferently as she raised her wine jug. "Sure." Ningchen picked up the wine jug and clinked it loudly. Then he drank all the wine in the jug in one gulp. At this moment, the door behind them creaked open and the little girl walked out. She looked at the two people in the courtyard and shouted, "Time's up. It's time to take your medicine." Xia Zi looked back at the little girl and said calmly, "Jiming Marquis, your disciple's talent is 1,000 times better than yours." Ningchen nodded and said, "This child's temper is very similar to that little girl, a man. His natural talent is shocking, yet he doesn't like to cultivate. It'll be better if we discipline him a little. Here's your medicine." Took 2 steps forward and handed over a bottle of medicine. Then she moved to the side of the person beside her in fear, not daring to get too close to the devil in front of her. "Don't be afraid. He's Master's friend, a friend who has gone through life and death together," softly said Ningchen as he rubbed the little girl's hair. Xia Zi didn't say anything. He didn't admit or deny it. Ningchen was still a bit uncomfortable and she carefully said, "Big Sister Qingluo told me to make sure you take your medicine. She won't be back until later." Ningchen nodded and said, "It's getting late. Go rest. We'll take our own medicine." "No, Big Sister Qingluo told me to watch you finish it," stubbornly refused. Xia Zi directly crushed the jade bottle in his hand and poured the medicine into his mouth. Ningchen helplessly smiled and also opened his own bottle, swallowing the unbearable poison. Once the medicine entered his stomach, an intense stimulation rapidly spread through his meridians. The terrifying pain was like a raging inferno burning his body, making him wish he was dead. This highly toxic medicine had an extremely intense medicinal effect. Even the two of them couldn't help sweating. Yin was trembling with fear as she watched from the side. She was afraid that this medicine would really poison them to death. Are you all right? After a long time, seeing that their complexions had improved a bit, Yin tugged at the person beside her in concern. I'm fine. Ningchen smiled tiredly and replied. Of course they're fine. This medicine is to heal their injuries, not poison them to death. A green-robed woman walked over from outside the courtyard. She was holding a strangely shaped flower in her hand. It was silver-gray and emitted a faint light. It was something he had never seen before. Fourth senior apprentice sister. Ningchen politely greeted her. It seems you've recovered quite well. Come with me. Qing Luo examined him. Ningchen nodded. He glanced at the two people beside him, but he didn't say anything and followed her. I'm going to sleep. Yin hastily ran back into her room, not daring to stay behind. Within the courtyard, Xia Zi waved his hand and brought over another jug of wine. He silently drank it alone. Within the western courtyard's pharmacy, Qing Luo brought Ningchen over. The 9 netherworld flower in her hand emitted an eerie light and a cold aura. Even from several steps away, they could feel an unbearable chill. This is a 9 netherworld flower. Eat one every 8 hours. Within the pharmacy, Qing Luo tossed the 9 netherworld flower over. What use does it have? Ningchen received it. Looking at the 9 silver-gray flowers, he didn't understand. The Sun True scripture in your body contains that old fellow's consciousness. This 9 netherworld flower is incomparably poisonous. Perhaps it will be of some help to you, said Qing Luo. Cold sweat involuntarily dripped down Ningchen's back. Nothing will happen, right? You won't die. It's the lesser of 2 evils. Last time, you were only able to survive thanks to senior apprentice brother's help. Next time, you won't be so lucky, said Qing Luo. Senior apprentice brother? Ningchen's eyes narrowed. Mo Gate's first peak master, Xiang Yuan? You still haven't seen senior apprentice brother. But you'll see him very soon. Qing Luo was tidying up the drawers of precious medicinal herbs in front of her. Are all of my senior apprentice brothers and sisters still alive? Ningchen's expression was grave. No. Qing Luo stopped what she was doing and calmly said, Yuehua and Huayang are dead. Your 3rd senior apprentice brother is also dead. As for Ling Luozhen, it's basically impossible for her to still be alive. Ningchen sighed. As expected, he had been overthinking things. 4th senior apprentice sister, you said senior apprentice brother helped us. What's that about? Ningchen gathered his thoughts. It's a long story. During the devilish calamity on Galistar, that old monster didn't send out 5th junior apprentice brother and the others. Instead, he sent you, the disciple who had joined the sect for the shortest time. Senior apprentice brother and I felt that something was wrong, so senior apprentice brother went to Mo Mountain. I followed. When you were fighting with that old monster, senior apprentice brother also attacked to hold back his main body. Once his main body couldn't split apart, his body's transformation energy would quickly vanish, explained Qing Luo. Senior apprentice brother will be fine, right? Ningchen's eyes narrowed. He's fine. Senior apprentice brother's cultivation base is the highest among all of us. Even if he isn't that old monster's match, escaping shouldn't be a problem, said Qing Luo. Just what secret does Master Mo have? Why did the true sun realm in my body give birth to another person's consciousness? Ningchen didn't understand. We're not too sure about that either. However, before that old man became the master of Mo Gate had never had an immortal art in its countless years of inheritance. Whether it was the 7-colored immortal art or the yin-yang immortal art, they weren't martial arts of Mo Gate. However, the cultivation techniques in our bodies all came from those 2 immortal arts. The longer we cultivate, the stronger our consciousness will become until it devours our own bodies. So the root of everything should be those 2 immortal arts. What's his goal? Ningchen didn't understand. I don't know. Qing Luo shook her head. Only that old monster knows what happens to those whose consciousnesses are devoured. Senior apprentice brother is the only one who managed to sever his own consciousness. Zichuan and I were saved by him. Zichuan? The master of the seventh peak? Ningchen frowned. Qing Luo nodded. You've seen him before. He's the purple Marquis you speak of. Ningchen narrowed his eyes. No wonder a corporeal realm expert called Purple Marquis had suddenly appeared in this world. So Purple Marquis was Zichuan from back then. Zichuan's talent is the best amongst us. His cultivation speed is second only to senior apprentice brother who joined the sect the earliest. However, Zichuan's temperament is arrogant and impatient. He doesn't know how to be patient. Otherwise, his accomplishments might have already surpassed senior apprentice brother, Qing Luo said regretfully. Right, before senior apprentice sister disappeared, she left behind this box of rouge. The rouge contains her blood. Can we use this to find her whereabouts? As he spoke, Ningchen took out the rouge box he had been hiding on his body and handed it over. Qing Luo put down the medicinal herbs in her hand and took the rouge box. She frowned. Heart's blood essence. After thinking for a moment, Qing Luo returned the rouge box. Put it away properly. The extreme yin and extreme yang martial arts complement each other. This drop of heart's blood essence might be of great use in the future. Ningchen nodded and put away the rouge box. Here's your medicine. Not long after, Qing Luo threw a bag of medicine to him. Using the 9 netherworld flower will be very painful. These medicines will help you alleviate the pain. However, unless you really can't bear it, use them sparingly. These medicines will more or less affect the 9 netherworld flowers' medicinal effects. There's only one 9 netherworld flower, and once it's used up, there won't be any more. I understand. Many thanks, senior apprentice sister. Ningchen received the medicine and solemnly thanked her. No need to be so polite. In this world, if we don't help each other, no one will be able to help us. That old fellow's strength is too terrifying. In the future, when we face him head-on, one more person is one more force, replied Qing Luo. Ningchen nodded. After thinking for a moment, he looked at her and said, There's one more thing I want to ask senior apprentice sister. I wonder if senior apprentice sister knows of any inheritances in this world where every member is carrying a coffin and their cultivation is above the immortal treading realm. Qing Luo's eyes narrowed. Why are you asking this? Have you already seen these people? You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.